Welcome all to the 3rd of March 2025 Council meeting. I open the meeting at 7 p.m. Our meeting is being held on the traditional land of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people, and on behalf of Banyule City Council, I acknowledge them as the traditional custodians. I'd also like to pay my respects to the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung elders, past, present and emerging, and to acknowledge other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders with us today. Our community is made up of diverse cultures, beliefs, abilities, bodies, sexualities, ages and genders. We are committed to access, equity, participation and rights for everyone, principles which empower, foster harmony and increase the well-being of an inclusive community. I will now pass on to the Chief Executive Officer, Ms Alison Beckwith, who will read out the formalities.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome everyone to this ordinary meeting of Council. As the Mayor indicated, my name is Alison Beckwith and I'm the Chief Executive Officer here at Banyule Council. Tonight's meeting is being held in person in accordance with the provision of Council's governance rules and the Local Government Act 2020. The meeting is being live streamed via Council's website and Facebook page. The live stream is not interactive, so any comments or private messages directed to us while the stream is live will not be presented to the Council group or have any bearing on the conduct of tonight's meeting. Council's request to speak process continues to allow participation of our residents without having to attend meetings in person. Public question time will occur at the conclusion of the meeting. If a member of the public who submitted a question is present, they are welcome to read their question as submitted or have their question read out on behalf of them by a member of the staff. If not present, the question will not be read out. However, all public questions and responses will be included in the meeting minutes following tonight's meeting. I'll just remind you all that no statement may be derogatory, defamatory or directed to an individual councillor, member of staff, ratepayer or member of the public. A 2-minute time limit does apply to all request to speaks tonight. The timer will be used and a warning will sound at the 1.5-minute mark. We do ask you to sum up for the last 30 seconds, and if a statement is being read out, then officers will sum up as well. We do ask that members of the gallery please check your phones and ensure that it's either switched off or in silent mode to avoid disruptions to tonight's meeting. And I also want to remind everyone that Council has a zero tolerance for any form of bullying, harassment or violence. Everyone present in the gallery, including community members of Council staff and councillors, are expected to respect the individual views of all others, irrespective of their own view held, so that everyone can respectively participate in the Council meeting. If any member of the public gallery departs the chamber while the meeting is still in progress, we ask that you don't hold conversations until you're actually outside the building. This beautiful building is a heritage listed building, and so noise does actually reverberate from outside foyer and downstairs into the chamber and affect those listening at home. So I thank you in advance for that. I'll now introduce the councillors in attendance tonight, and I'll start with my left. I have Councillor Matt Wood, Councillor Alicia Curry, Councillor Mary O'Kane and Councillor Alison Champion. And to my right, I have the Mayor, Councillor Elizabeth Neely, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Peter Castaldo, Councillor Rick Garotti, Councillor Alida McKern and Councillor Mark Di Pasquale. This evening the councillors are also joined by the executive team. So over to my left I have Natasha Swan, Director of City Development, and not in the room at the moment, Joseph Tobacco, Director of Community Wellbeing. And over to my right, Greg Gale, Acting Director, Assets and City Services, and Mark Gilio, Director, Corporate Services. The Council team is also supported by the governance team, our IT team, to ensure that this meeting runs smoothly. So thank you for your attendance tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you to the CEO. I note there are no apologies this evening and no leave of absence. Confirmation of the minutes from the ordinary meeting of council held on the 10th of February 2025. Can I please have a councillor to move? Moved Councillor De Pasquale, seconded Councillor O'Kane. I now put the motion. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Moving to disclosures of interests, as required at any other meeting of council, councillors must declare a conflict of interest at the start of the meeting and leave the meeting when the item is presented to council. Councillors will be required to leave the meeting and return when the item has been resolved, and at any point throughout the meeting, if any other councillor recognises that they have a general or material interest, they can flag it at that point and follow the same procedure. Are there any disclosures of interest?
Mayor, I would like to declare an interest in item 2.1.
Thank you. Councillor De Pasquale, declaring a conflict of interest for item 2.1 on the ongoing residential street parking in Clara Street, McLeod. Have another conflict? Councillor Curry.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm declaring a conflict of interest on item 3.8, which is 1 Stradbroke Avenue. Would you like me to read? I might read mine now so I can step out at the time. So in my private capacity as a resident prior to becoming a councillor, I provided a submission to the planning panel in relation to C172 amendment, in which I referenced 1 Stradbroke Avenue. I'm of the view that if I were to participate in the decision on this item now as a councillor, an impartial, fair-minded person may consider that my private view could impact my public duty, and as such I'm declaring a general conflict of interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Your conflict of interest is noted. Councillors, this evening we also have the proposed budget 2025 to 2029 for public exhibition up for consideration. At that item, I'll invite any councillor to identify conflicts of interest, material or general, in relation to the endorsement of the proposed budget to be released for public exhibition, and to describe the nature of that interest in accordance with the Local Government Act 2020 and the Banyule Governance Rules at item 3.2 on the agenda. Okay, moving on to disclosures of staff, officers that are present. I now ask whether you have any conflict of interest in any item presented before council. No? No? Okay, moving on. There are no items of urgent business. We'll move straight to the petition. Ongoing residential street parking in Clara Street, McLeod. Councillor,
Mayor,
yep.
I would like to declare a conflict of interest to this item. Petition ongoing residential street parking, Clara Street, McLeod. My interests exist due to my residence being in the general vicinity, and as such I have a material conflict of interest as I stand to make a gain or loss, dependent on the outcomes of Council's decision on the item.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, moving on with this, there are 5 speakers to this item. Christine Telfer will address council in person and is speaking for the recommendation. Is Christine here? Yep, come forward, Christine, please, to the lectern. Thank you, Christine. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Good idea, thank you. From the outset, the reason residents are here tonight is to present our issues to council, and we all believe it should never have got this far. Our pocket of McLeod cannot support approximately 500 to 600 vehicles utilising our streets on a daily basis as free parking zone. An observation of the majority of the vehicles only have one driver and no passengers. Until recently, it was not uncommon for Wilkinson Street to have up to 35 NEL vehicles parked on a daily basis. At 9 o'clock today, 25 vehicles were parked, with the congestion area being the Yallambee Road end of Wilkinson Street. Our residents also possess 29 vehicles, consisting of family vehicles, trader utes and one caravan. Private vehicles are normally garaged or parked in driveways. However, there are occasions when residents park in the street to ensure we can get out of our property. Our residents are a mixture of young families, army personnel, ongoing and retired, tradies and retirees. There are a number of safety risks for our street. Wilkinson Street is extremely narrow, only being 6.8 metres wide, with two bends in front of number 3 and number 8. Clearly, these two areas should be subject of no standing anytime signage. The bigger vehicles, such as the dual cabin utes, continually park on these corners or opposite, making it extremely difficult to pass in between without causing damage to vehicles, and trying to reverse in the street is impossible. Whilst the temporary bollards have alleviated some of our issues, it's only temporary until Council installs the appropriate signage in a timely manner. Trying to reverse out of your driveway with vehicles parked on either side, you run the risk of being hit by another vehicle, or you're going to run into another one yourself. Access to Yallambee Road, vision is obscured for oncoming traffic in either direction. It's hard to understand why a 2-hour parking sign was erected in Yallambee Road, approximately 6 metres from the corner of Wilkinson Street. The resident of 1A Wilkinson Street states she has noticed 3 vehicles taken in turns to park up to 12 hours in her space. She has the registration numbers if Council is interested. Parking tickets have never been issued to that spot. The resident is an elderly widow who has a physiotherapist and cleaner attend on a weekly basis for up to an hour.
You can
and
please
a
sum
gardener
up.
who attends once a fortnight. There's no room for them to park. Whilst the recent placement of bollards and other
Sorry,
parking
Christine, if you could sum up, please.
Okay, this is it. The placement of bollards has eased the issue. However, the NEL workers are literally doing this to us and to Council because there's no authority to park them. They ignore the parking signs, they ignore the residents, and we cannot go on in this fashion. Something has to give. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. There's a few mobile phones going off in the gallery. Our next speaker is Catherine Mifsud, who will address Council in person. Thank you, Catherine. If you could please approach. Go do our best to stick to 2 minutes.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you all for this opportunity to speak. I've lived in Harborne Street for over 25 years and I suffer from chronic pain, and the stress that the roadworks has brought has affected my health greatly. Since North East Link has begun, our local streets have been overrun by large trucks and tradies' utes. These large vehicles parked in our suburb is making it difficult to see, dangerous driving down the narrow roads and turning in and out of our local streets. We've had 2 cars sideswiped and 1 badly damaged by a truck. Since the introduction of the new parking rules, we've been issued with 4 parking fines, which has been very stressful for me. I attended court to contest one of the fines and was given an adjourned undertaking. Another fine was issued to a vehicle with a valid permit, and the other 2 I maintain are issued questionably. When issued a fine in October 2024, I checked Council's website to confirm my permit details. My portal page showed that I had 3 permits that valid from the 30th of June 2024 to the 31st of July 2025, which meant that I was covered when the fine was issued. I queried the fine and was told that my permit was purchased in October 2024. I questioned the expiry date and was told to refer to Council's webpage, and this showed that my permit was valid up until the 31st of July 2025. I would have expected that my expiry date should have been October 20 25, 12 months from the purchase date. So why am I not getting 12 months coverage for my permit? So it just seems that when it came to issuing a fine, I was not covered, but the expiry date still remains the 31st of July 2025, which doesn't seem fair. If council is referring residents to the website to gain information on what our permit start and end dates are, that information needs to be resolved ASAP. I understand Banyule City Council is not responsible for bringing these roadworks to our community, nor did they want them, but as a long-term resident, I would have appreciated a little more empathy and understanding from council. We all want what is best for the community.
Thank you, Catherine.
No.
Our next speaker is Jodie Larkin, who will address the council in person. Thank you, Jodie.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, councillors and officers. My name is Jodie Larkin. I reside at 4 Clara Street, McLeod. I'm here to represent the residents. For the past 2.5 years, we have been enduring the parking congestion caused by the NELP workers. Over 600 extra cars in my immediate area. This has resulted in limited access for emergency vehicles, creating a significant safety risk. In addition, family, friends, personal carers, delivery services all have difficulties in accessing this street. The garbage truck has been deployed 2 or 3 times on certain occasions. NEL workers have been playing loud music, engaging in loud conversations in the early AM hours, urinating in people's front yards, and the occasional vandalism. This is leaving the residents to feel very unsafe. We endure these situations almost every day. No standing signs would help. We would like to see more vigilance and regularity from parking inspectors and more inspectors due to the large volume of cars. And we would like these inspectors to enforce the laws and keep up with the existing laws. Residential parking permits 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for Clara Street and surrounding streets. 1 hour parking with the time of 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Also issuing free permits to residents will make a significant impact. We are facing another 4 to 5 years of this situation. It is imperative that something's done immediately to alleviate the congestion. In closing, I would like to ask the council group and all officers, do you think it's reasonable for the residents to have to pay for parking permits? Should all residents get a discount on their rates as compensation? And how much longer will it take you to act on the limited access to emergency vehicles when you were told by the FRV in November 2024 about limited street access, putting residents' safety at risk? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jodie. Our next speaker is Greg Kaikaj. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Who will address council in person, and he's speaking for the recommendation. Apologies for the pronunciation.
It's Kitsay. It's very difficult. Good evening, Madam Mayor and councillors. Thanks very much for having the opportunity to talk. I'm speaking for the residents that live within Eyre Street, May and Windsor Streets, McLeod. Reiterating all the other calls about the parking issues, I won't go over them again. We received a letter drop in our letterboxes in February 14 notifying of the changes to the parking within Eyre Street, and speaking for the residents within Eyre Street, that's fine. I'm just asking now that once those signs are put in as part of the Stage 5 plan, that also Windsor Street is included in that plan, because currently the figures as per the agenda and the leaflet that have been issued to residents is not included at the moment. The restrictions that will be imposed from Oban Way all the way down Eyre Street and up May Street must also include Eyre Street, and again for the same reasons, to allow ingress and egress of properties to become safe. We can get fire rescue people in if we need to. Just taking a back step for that, understanding, like Jodie said, council didn't bring these workers to the thing, and it's a state-driven project, but through the initiation phases of the project, council would have been made aware of the footprint through land transfer deeds and everything else that the project required to build the project itself, and in turn would have understood the number of workers that would have been coming to the area. So we're in the phase now where we're trying to push council to put these restrictions in place, which some people will want and other people will oppose, and it makes things difficult. So we're asking that council act on this pretty promptly and understand when this stage 5, particularly in my area, is going to be rolled out, and then those additional streets are put in place. Like I said, through the deeds and the writs that would have been executed between council and the project, the number of workers coming into the area and where they were going to park would have been a talking point at the time. So I'm sure council would have been aware of the numbers. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Our final speaker is Paul Valance, who is speaking in person. Is Paul here? No? Okay. Thank you. Thank you to all the speakers, spoke very well. Councillors, there's an officer report before you as set out in the agenda papers. Are there any questions of officers before we move forward? Councillor Wood.
A couple of questions to Director Swan. Just on the back of what we've just heard there, have we got any timeframes around stage 5 rollout?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. So council did send letters out seeking community feedback. I'm not exactly sure where we're at in terms of considering that feedback, but it's not far off. I understand that we do have a contractor available approximately mid-March to commence the rollout of the signage. And we're currently also reviewing the use of stickers to be able to vary the time that the existing signage in the areas that have already been rolled out happening at approximately the same time.
Okay, no worries. I'll leave it at that for now, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wood. I believe Paul Valance is here. If you'd like to come to the lectern and speak to the recommendation. Thank you, Paul. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you. My apologies for being late. I got the time wrong. So I'm from Jules Court in McLeod. That's just off your Lambie Road, about maybe 100 metres from Greensborough Highway, so quite close to the construction. And yeah, we've been experiencing quite a few issues, and I've taken a bit of a census from my neighbours as to the issues that have been frustrating us the most, and they are in no particular order. We as residents have gotten fines because of the parking restrictions that have already been put in place where we are, and those fines have been given for people having visitor parking permits that sort of curled up in the sun and kind of fell off the dash but had been assumed to be displayed. My wife, who has a parking permit, also received a fine, and other fines that just for simple forgetfulness of people moving cars out of driveways and things like that to accommodate other cars getting in and out and just not getting them back in soon enough. These have been quite frustrating to dispute. There's been no kind of compassion or leniency for the residents themselves who are these parking restrictions are supposedly to protect. I repeatedly was told that I must have made a mistake when and had not purchased a permit, even though I was looking at the website in front of me showing me that I had a permit registered. I was told by council that after repeated phone calls of being told that I was mistaken, they finally admitted that they actually couldn't see the permit system and didn't know whether or not I had a permit at the time. So that's some of the frustrations that we've been facing around that. The stuff you've probably already heard around garbage trucks not getting in and constantly having our bins not being collected, street sweepers not getting in, emergency services, deliveries and visitors have all had trouble getting into the streets.
And if you could just sum up your main point, please. You're out of time.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I can see you getting your thoughts together, but if you could quickly sum up.
Quickly sum up. Some of the more pressing ones are the loud and aggressive workers. Their language and their demeanour is not great for those of us that have got little kids playing out the front. We find that constantly a bit of a problem. The very poor visibility trying to get in and out of our court is also quite dangerous, and the residents have found that to be very, very difficult. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Paul. You got there in the end. I now call for a motion. Moved Councillor Wood, seconded Councillor Champion. Councillor Wood, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the 46 residents who submitted the petition and met with the Mayor and I in Clara Street a few weeks ago. Thank you also to the speakers tonight, making your points eloquently and your arguments are well understood. Special thanks to Jodie Larkin for bringing this issue to us tonight. Since the meeting a couple of weeks ago, I'm pleased to announce, as we've heard tonight, Banyule City Council has approved and begun rolling out Stage 5 restrictions covering 16 streets, many of which have been raised this evening, and there's detail on those available in the agenda. Further, all stages 1 through to 5 will extend permit restrictions from 10 hours to 24 hours, and a full-time inspector has been approved to enforce compliance. These actions align with community expectations, and I thank the officers for their work thus far. Mayor and councillors, it is both incumbent and appropriate for Banyule City Council to advocate for our residents on North East Link issues. The broader Banyule community is experiencing severe parking and accessibility issues in the heart of our city. With 6,000 staff employed at the Greensborough Road site and no dedicated parking, we have over 2,000 extra cars flooding our local streets every day. However, this issue is more than just parking, it's accessibility through our city. Truck movements exceeding 1,400 per day at the moment, over 1 per minute, adding to the congestion and safety risks. Just last Thursday, 8 a.m, a North East Link truck carrying a 20-tonne steel cage rolled at the Greensborough Lower Plenty Road intersection. Fortunately, I think through good luck rather than good management, there was no serious injury. Meanwhile, Lower Plenty Road is reduced to a single lane in each direction till the end of July, forcing peak hour traffic onto Yallambee Road and Banyule Roads past multiple schools. At the same time, bus replacements on the Hurstbridge line are compounding the disruption. This situation is extreme and it is unacceptable. Back onto parking in our streets, the project is failing to meet its environmental performance requirements. T2 states worker parking should be provided at construction compounds where practicable. It's not happening. SC3 requires workforce awareness to prevent parking impacts on our local streets. We've heard tonight that that's not being enforced. I've spoken to project staff. They've told me these issues are not being addressed internally. Workers have alternatives. Public transport and the Garbonia Overflow car park with a shuttle from Watsonia as an example, but they refuse to use them whilst they have better alternatives. Instead, they continue to clog our local streets. While I acknowledge the positive steps Council has taken in the past months, this is not a complete solution. The problem is simply and literally shifting further down the road. More action is needed here. Tomorrow I will formally request our officers to investigate Stage 6 restrictions that will include Windsor Street, as brought up this evening. This will also speak to address the issue of costs of permits. And clearly after tonight there's work to be done with regard to resident fines. And I'll carry on with this in coming days. Council must stand firm. Our residents cannot be ignored. With at least 4 more years of construction, the road ahead is a long one. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor. Does the seconder wish to speak? Councillor Curry.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks to Councillor Wood for his very strong advocacy for the residents and for coming to a meeting which included residents from my ward as well. We are going to start taking some stronger action. It is a difficult space for council at this point, as identifying cars that need to be fined and residents that needed to be given some leeway as difficult space for us. Finding options for the North East Link workers when that is out of our scope and we can't force them to take parking options. Even if North East Link agreed to give them parking options, there would be nothing to stop them parking in the streets except for the permit requirements or the residential, the 2-limit time frame. I suspect it's going to get worse as North East Link ramps up and their 24 hours a day work schedule. We do have various comments received from residents as to whether the parking restrictions are appropriate, whether they want them or not. So we are trying to work in with everybody, and we do take your feedback on when we start rolling out those letters to you. So please make sure you keep bringing them back to us. I think also that we're getting daily reports of bad behaviour, and again, it's a bit out of our control. And I think, Mayor, I'm going to request that potentially we go another level up and request the Minister for Transport and Infrastructure to visit Banyule for a meeting with the Mayor, the CEO and councillors, and potentially Councillor Wood and I would like to attend that meeting. I think we need to drive it up past the North East Link. I don't think we're getting good reactions from North East Link. I don't think residents are getting good reactions from North East Link. These things remain unresolved. And so I think we need to do a little bit further. And so with your permission, Mayor, and your advocacy as well, I think we can do a better job, and I look forward to improving the situation for all of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Does any other councillor wish to speak? No? Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few words to applaud both Councillor Matt Wood and Councillor Alicia Curry on their advocacy. As new councillors, I've been really impressed with how they have very seriously addressed this issue. Indeed, reading Councillor Matt Wood's Facebook page recently, I was quite taken by the level of detail that he included on that Facebook post as to the meeting he held with residents, together with the Mayor, who was in attendance at that meeting, and I believe 50 residents also attended to hear what Matt and the Mayor had to say. And I thought the post was very well articulated, the issues and also what Council is doing about them. So if you haven't seen Councillor Matt Wood's Facebook post, I would encourage you to have a look. Once again, new councillors, I think you're doing a great job. Well done to you.
Okay. Thank you, councillors, for those comments. It is a tough situation. Council has advocated on behalf of residents to the government. It's also, you know, getting that balance right with the parking. As one of the speakers mentioned, some residents are strongly for particular restrictions while others are not. So we have to, you know, support as best we can by installing the right amount of parking restrictions to manage it all, ensure that there's road safety, and to ensure, you know, that we're dealing with non-compliance, because I know that's an issue for a lot of the residents here tonight, and congestion, you know, essential services getting through and the like. So, you know, a project of this magnitude needs a cooperative approach, and, you know, council's consulting with residents, we're speaking to the local members, and, you know, we really need to make sure that we can, you know, move forward in a positive way, particularly with the overnight activities that are here and coming. And thank you, Councillor Curry, to invite the Minister as well. We can certainly advocate as much as we can. I now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Yep.
Mayor?
Councillor?
Not sure, were we looking to move a procedural to bring forward agenda item 6.1?
Yes, thank you, Councillor.
As the next agenda item, I'm happy to move that procedural. So moved.
So we're bringing forward 6.1, thank you councillor, proposed Telstra telecommunications facility at Waterdale Road in response to the petition. Do we have a seconder? Seconded councillor McKern. All those in favour? The motion is carried. So bringing forward item 6.1. I'll just go to my notes. As thank you, Councillor Di Pasquale, returning. So 6.1, response to petition. There are 3 speakers on this item. We'll start with John Wilson. Is John Wilson here? Yes. Thank you, John. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, thanks Mayor and councillors for your time again tonight. I just wanted to talk in regards to the petition that we put in last meeting and go through some of the points that were made in the current meeting minutes, which we saw as positive direction on behalf of the council as well as the executive. So I'll just read through what I've written there. In 2020, Telstra requested a 30-metre monopole and equipment shelter at the Ivanhoe Aquatic Centre car park, along with other nearby council-owned sites. All these sites were deemed unsuitable by council in the interim years between 2020 and 2024. As stated in the March meeting minutes tonight, council must consider requests from telecommunication carriers for the use of council land in an open, transparent and consistent manner. However, I believe over the past 4 years, council rejected all proposed sites without adequate transparency and communication to Banyule residents. This left Telstra with few options but to propose locating the tower next to ratepayer homes, which is totally unacceptable. We would like to thank Councillor Alida McKern and also Kate Thwaites for their advocacy and support for our petition and for speaking on our behalf. So thank you for that. It's been well received. With the petition now received by council, we hope that more councillors, including the Mayor, will now support the residents and push for more suitable options. So in 2022, a request for a telecommunications facility at Ford Park and Cartledge Reserve was rejected due to the potential public space loss and negative impacts on recreational facilities. The March update is very encouraging as council officers now further investigate these sites, along with other government sites in the Belfield-Ivanhoe precinct. So that's good news. The reconsideration of these 2 larger recreational sites is positive as they have minimal community use, allowing for the tower to be placed at a respectful distance from residents' homes. There's also potential for co-sharing arrangement, hopefully, with other telcos in these sites. So we urge council officers to work closely with Telstra to facilitate these sites as much better alternatives for the new tower location than the one that's currently on the agenda. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Our next speaker is David Yancik, who will address council in person. Thank you, David.
Thank you again, councillors, for your advocacy on this issue. It is at the heart of the community, hyper-local services development, with the community clearly expressing their strong will against the Telstra proposal. We also thank council officers for their work in looking at alternative locations. We strongly support the point that, quote, council officers can revisit potential suitable locations, end quote, including those identified in the report and other possible ones. Personally, I disagree with the view that the Waste Recovery Centre is not suitable. I note council previously rejected even a modest proposal for a, quote, temporary mobile trailer tower, end quote, at the centre as an interim arrangement. I'm not sure how a mobile trailer parked in a corner or car park of the site could interfere with operations. I also note the centre was closed all of last week for essential maintenance, demonstrating there are periods where Telstra could complete servicing when required without interfering with operations. I would also welcome council sharing the risk assessment of this. The Waste Recovery Centre continues to look like a common sense solution. A large site, accessible, serviceable, away from residents' homes, right where Telstra wants to provide a service, and importantly, a potential new income stream for council. Equally, other sites identified in the report, Ford Park, sites around the Darebin Creek, can deliver the same outcome. I note that the report states to undertake investigations, Council requires, quote, detailed understanding of the telecommunications needs to be met, the scale of the facility proposed, etc. Council should already have these details from when Telstra wrote to Council in November/December last year to consult on their existing proposal. On the recommendations in the Council report, I asked that on point 2, the recommendation change from noting the advocacy and consideration of other sites to a more affirmative action. That is, Council proactively writing to Telstra, given the revisiting of potential suitable locations, asking Telstra to work with Council and to select a more suitable locations. We, the community, stand ready to work with Council and Telstra on a common sense solution. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Our next speaker is Thomas Kotsonis, who will address the Council in person. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you and good evening. Firstly, I'd like to express my gratitude to Council for the resource and energy invested in generating the report pertaining to 6.1. It's appreciated. Thank you. Whilst this proposal does not require a permit, and we do understand that, it does not absolve the Council's responsibility under Section 6 of the Mobile Base Station Deployment Code. This is a kind reminder that the code requires the Council to review the suitability of the site during the draft consultation plan from Telstra. The two objectives of the code state, one, and I quote, to allow the community and councils to have a greater participation in the decision-making process of carriers when deploying mobile phone base stations. And secondly, provide greater transparency to the local community and councils when a carrier is planning, selecting sites for installing and operating mobile phone radio communications infrastructure. Unfortunately, this did not occur prior to the limited letter drop by Telstra. Considering the close proximity of the proposed site to the nearest residents and that the site is in a community-sensitive, dense residential area, what checks and balances were taken during the consultation process by Banyule Council? I'd like to draw your attention to Section 6.2.3 from the Code, Part A. The carrier must invite the Council to comment on the suitability of the draft consultation plan for this community. This begs two questions which I would like to pose to Council. Number one, could the Council please share their comment on the suitability of 218 Waterdale Road per the consultation plan? And two, were other more suitable alternative sites discussed or proposed? Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Thomas. Councillor McKern.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, with respect to the Speaker's questions, the two questions that he's finished his statement on, could we kindly have a response from the respective director?
Thank you, Councillor. Director Swan.
Through you, Mayor, I think the first part of the question was what consideration did we have to Section 6 of the Deployment Code? So Telstra is required to submit, or the telco provider is required to submit a consultation plan that shows how they and the expanse of which they are due to give notice. We did receive a copy of that consultation plan, and we felt that it was certainly in keeping with consultation plans of that nature in terms of the area of signage that was to be on the buildings and also the number of letters that would be sent to the neighbourhood. So we didn't raise any concerns with that. With respect to the second part of the question about other sites consideration, the Council report clearly outlines which requests we have received, and we've undertaken an assessment by relevant officers that manage that land about the suitability and formed our views on whether we felt the proposal that was before us could or could not be adequately contained on that land.
Thank you, Councillor McKern. Are there any other questions? Councillors, there's an officer report before you. I'm now calling for a motion. Move. So, Councillor McKern. There's some amended words. Could you please take us through?
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to point out that the amended words speak to point 2, that Council note the advocacy proposed on behalf of the Banyule community requesting Telstra defer its proposal pending consideration of other suitable sites in the Belfield and Ivanhoe precinct, and the addition of point 4, that Council continues discussions with Telstra in relation to the potential lease of government-owned land for the provision of telecommunications infrastructure.
Thank you, Councillor McKern. Do I have a seconder? Seconded. Councillor Curry. Councillor Grotti.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just want to foreshadow that if this motion's not successful, I'll be looking to move the original motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Grotti. Councillor McKern, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you to our speakers, and thank you to Speaker David. I think point 4 of the motion speaks to his request, so good that we're on the same page. Yes, thank you for your continued advocacy for an alternative site for the proposed Telstra Tower. I really do appreciate how important this matter is to you. At February's meeting of Council, Council did resolve to explore alternative sites for the proposed Telstra Tower and undertake additional advocacy for relocation of the proposed tower. I can share that the proposed installation works have indeed been paused by Telstra until a site is finalised. Councillors will recall that there was an investigation undertaken by the independent body ACMA, the Australian Communication and Media Authority, into Telstra's public consultation process for this matter, as it was raised as a concern on the part of the residents. We have now been advised that ACMA has completed its assessment and found Telstra to be compliant and that no formal investigation is warranted. That said, I trust that this Council remains committed to addressing resident concerns regarding the proposed 218 Waterdale Road site, and as such is committed to continue working with Telstra to investigate alternative sites. We need to understand that this matter has indeed arisen due to the need to relocate the existing mobile tower from the former water tank site on the corner of Bell Street and Upper Heidelberg Road due to housing development works underway. And it's important to know that existing infrastructure is being replaced here rather than the expansion of the network. And I know there has been fears raised by some councillors that whatever we do here could then also be a pattern for future relocations. As for concerns raised that other telco companies will possibly follow suit and create a web of unsightly infrastructure, I'm advised by senior staff that co-location by other providers is more likely than the addition of more towers, creating quite a blight on the amenity of the area that they go into. I also think it's important to share, in response to recent resident correspondence I received requesting Council address this matter through its planning powers, that it doesn't have planning powers under the Planning and Environment Act. No planning permit is required. It's the federal government that regulates telecommunications, and that's why I continue to urge residents to approach the Honourable Kate Thwaites, who I'd like to point out has, according to resident feedback, been approachable and most communicative on this matter. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McKern. Does the seconder wish to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. So thank you, Councillor McKern, for bringing this and the wording that you've proposed here. I do have a number of concerns. I voiced them in the last meeting. I thank all the speakers for bringing their concerns. I understand it. I'm reasonably happy with this wording now, although I do want to bring up a couple of issues that are of importance here. So one is the point 4 brings up the potential lease of government-owned land, which doesn't limit the choices to council-owned land. And in that respect, we might find that Kate Thwaites is able to open up an avenue for residents. And so I do suggest that you continue your approach to Kate Thwaites to see if she can accommodate the Telstra infrastructure on other government land. I'm very cautious about locking council into a strategy here with the Waste Recovery Centre. For me, we've hit a little bit of an impasse in regards to the Waste Recovery Centre. So at this point in time, I'm saying that would be a very difficult point for council to consider. But there are other options that we could consider, not just for Telstra, but for all the telcos. It is something that we might be able to bring up at a later date. So I'm now happy with this wording to support Councillor McKern as for this, and we'll see it work in the background rather than in front of council, where officers will continue their work to see if there's other suitable options, which don't necessarily mean council land. And just a quick commendation to the officers for bringing back this report in such a short time frame to put some options on the table. So thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Does any other councillor wish to speak? No councillors wish to speak? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, look, I made my points clearly last time this was before us. Our task here is to note the report that's come back, which we'll do. With regards to a couple of the comments that have come up, we've had a good look at the Waste Recovery Centre in recent times. I can assure you, it's hard to articulate, but I can assure you this is not a suitable place for this tower. I hope that we can get the information to you to put your mind at ease. But from what we've seen, the scheduled maintenance that you referred to very kindly, not so scheduled. There's some big issues there that we're dealing with, and adding an element like a telecommunication tower now is just unthinkable. So you need to take that for what it's worth. Point 3, note the process for council identifying land for potential lease to a telecommunications provider. I'll certainly note it. I don't agree with it. I appreciate the level of work and it means a lot to those that are affected, but our general ratepayers, I don't think this is good use of our resources. I worry about where we're heading here. If we're talking about telecommunication towers and we're advocating to the federal government, great, you've got my support. We're talking about a single tower. What happens at the next one? Are we going to do this over again? So I worry about that. But with regards to noting the report, I'll be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Garotti.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just as I mentioned earlier, I'll be not supporting this amended motion, and if it's unsuccessful, then looking to move the original. I'm very grateful for the work that was undertaken by officers following the resolution that we moved at the last meeting to call for the report. I found the report to be very informative, but I think at the end of the day we have to be responsible with the use of council resources in how we approach these tasks. We also have to be honest and upfront with the community as well about what we can realistically achieve, and I don't want there to be a sense that council has a greater role or influence to change the outcome than what's there at the moment. So for those reasons, I won't be supporting the amended motion, and I'll be looking for support for the original. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Castaldo.
Yeah, I'd just like to acknowledge the significant efforts that the community have gone to try and deliver the best possible outcome, not only for yourselves, but for the other residents, and also Councillor McKern on her advocacy, and the Honourable Kate Thwaites as well. We've gone through a long process. As the last two speakers have mentioned, that we don't want it to keep going, and we've seen information, a tremendous amount on this. Our officers have provided us with information, but I want to just keep kicking this can down the road when there seems to be quite a reasoned argument on why it's going there, and there are no other alternatives that have become available to us. So I will also be not supporting the amendment, but comfortable with the officer recommendation, because I don't want to drag this out any further for the residents, because it's not going to change, in my view, once I've seen all the information.
Thank you, councillor. Does any other councillor wish to speak? I put the motion to invite... Oh, sorry, councillor McKern.
Thank you, fellow councillors, for your comments. I would just put to you before you vote to consider that not all sites have been explored. As I've mentioned previously, there are other sites such as the areas around Cyril Cummings Reserve and the Parks Depot, which I still haven't had an opportunity to explore with the officers on site. I have requested on a number of occasions meetings to explore those sites. While I appreciate your frustration and your concern about the allocation of resources, I think we also have to bear in mind the number of residents who have objected to this proposal. Over 350 residents have signed a petition. I would hope that that would mean something to you. That is a fair proportion of the community that objects to the location. I'm also concerned about a comment made by one of the councillors around this potentially being a pattern for future telco towers. As I mentioned, this is a relocation of an existing tower. For the most part, I've been informed that telco towers in Banyule are more or less established now. And so I don't see this and further exploration with a discussion with Telstra, which is essentially what we're looking for, a discussion with Telstra, as impinging excessively on future resources of our staff. And I don't see it as creating a pattern for future installations, given that for the most part, as an established area regarding towers, they're already in place. This is a relocation of an existing tower. So I would ask you to allow us one more bite at the cherry for a further discussion with Telstra to see if we can take this to another site.
Thank you, councillor McKern. I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is lost. I now call for a motion.
Hi, Mayor. I'll move as per the officer recommendation in the papers 1, 2, 3 and 1.2 and 3 above.
Moved, councillor Garotti. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, councillor Champion. Does the councillor wish to speak?
I think I covered my comments earlier. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Does the seconder wish to speak? Does any other councillor wish to speak? I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Thank you to the residents that came to speak to that tonight. Okay, we're going to keep going. Moving to item 3.1. Councillors, the next 5 items, 3.1 to 3.5, relate to our legislated integrated planning documents. Banyule Futures is about working with the community to plan for the next 4 years and beyond. So from April to December 2024, we heard from 970 community members about local priorities, concerns, health and wellbeing. These key documents have now been drafted and will be considered separately and then made available for community consideration and feedback. A separate community forum will be held on the 15th of April to hear feedback from the community on these important documents. So I encourage our community to be involved. Moving to item 3.1, so the proposed Banyule Plan 2025 to 29 for public exhibition. There are 2 speakers on this item. Lauren Sanders will address council in person, and he's speaking against the recommendation. Lauren, if you'd like to come to the lectern. Thank you, Lauren. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors, and thank you for highlighting the public exhibition. That will be great. This is a lengthy document, so I aim to speak mostly on the health and wellbeing component. I did want to echo the sentiments a couple of meetings ago of Melissa Murphy-Webster's, just in regards to ensuring that the plan for the next 4 years is inclusive of all residents in Banyule. It's really clear within the health and wellness component that our First Nations people are a big priority, which is really important as we do know they're faced with a greater burden of disease. We're privileged here within Banyule as a local metro municipality that we've got access to local health services, childhood immunisations, etc. And I will note the Marigold strategy is underway in Banyule, which is fantastic, focusing on the health and wellbeing of our First Nations people. What I would really like to see is the same ferocity and enthusiasm that we have for greater health outcomes for our First Nations people, spread across all community members equally across Banyule. I was really shocked and sort of disappointed to see that 51% of our residents in Banyule are obese or overweight. That is 65,000 residents. That is huge, and only 34% of them are meeting currently the minimum requirements for physical activity. The everybody active component of this plan, it just failed to have any real tangible or practical strategies to see as a council how we're actually going to address that. I also think there was a lack of detail on the maternal child health services, our ageing population, and the increasing number of people, young children on the NDIS. I'll wrap up with some actionable changes that I think we could see within this plan. Things like increased access to lactation consultants. We know increasing breastfeeding rates decreases maternal and childhood obesity rates. Decreasing the fees within council for accessing, our local sporting grounds for personal trainers and small group exercise. A really easy way to get more people within Banyule socially engaged and engaged in physical activity. And also I'd love to see a targeted strategy for girls 14 to 16. We know this is the biggest attrition rate from local sport, and some KPIs that are actually measurable and health quantifiers would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. You've got a lot to say there, but maybe drop us an email. Our next speaker, I lost my notes. A written statement will be read out on behalf of Melissa Murphy-Webster by Greg Gale, Acting Director of Assets and City Services. Melissa is for the recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor. As brought up in the last ordinary meeting, I'd like to see encompass the full culture of Banyule, its rich and diverse history. It's important to recognise that all residents, regardless of their background or heritage, deserve equal respect and consideration. Elevating one group above others can create divisions and foster inequality, undermining the value of diversity and unity within the community. Equality and fairness are foundational to a harmonious and inclusive society where every individual's right and dignity are upheld without preference. Secondly, Council's focus on achieving net zero carbon, whilst consistently overlooking the other critical factors I've raised multiple times, is frustrating. Residents depend on accurate and comprehensive information from Council, and if that information lacks full context regarding the factors impacting the area and broader sustainability issues, informed consent cannot be achieved. There have been numerous facts presented by Banyule that I've had to formally request be stopped. A key part of the plan should be fostering open, respectful and non-dismissive discussions about what is happening to our environment, the human contribution, both deliberate and as a byproduct of existing, the role of nature and the true impact of consuming products that claim to be carbon neutral. Check out Codrington Wind Farm decommission story and the Golden Plains site woes. Lastly, I look forward to the upcoming work that will address the healthy Banyule aspect. The quality of air, water and food, along with fostering community connections and encouraging physical activity wherever and, if possible, will play a crucial role in improving mental health and enhancing longevity. These factors have a significant impact on overall well-being and are essential for creating a thriving, healthy community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, there's an officer report to set out in the papers. Are there any questions of officers? I'm now calling for a motion. Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor Castaldo, seconded Councillor Champion. Councillor Castaldo, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, I'll just speak briefly. We're going out to public consultation on this very important plan. Both councillors have an opportunity to participate from all their stakeholder engagement across the community, and also we had a very well-resourced and long think tank process where we've got some of the members in here tonight. Look, there's a lot that's gone into this. There's a tremendous amount of information that isn't published in this short document. But I can reassure you that, there's some tremendous work behind the wellbeing plan and some graphics that I'm very keen to share, brought it to the community to give you confidence, and I don't know whether that's going to be released in this level at this stage, but there's a lot of work that's gone into this, and I'm very supportive of it, but there's some big decisions going forward. There's a couple of major infrastructure projects that have been identified as priorities. We've also got financial plans around not going into debt. Now, I don't know how the two things are possible other than getting a lot of money from state and federal, and that's not always easy in an area like this, but we've got a lot of work to do, and we need to have those challenging conversations with our community, so I want to flag it here. Do we need to go into debt to resource some of those very important infrastructure projects, like the rebuilding of the Ivanhoe swimming pool? We've also got important infrastructure projects in Olympia for a community that really needs good public infrastructure, the Olympic Community Hub. So there's a lot of important work to be done. This doesn't say it all, but there's a lot that we need to discuss, and I'm very keen to see people at the consultation over this and hear their feedback over that journey on what really are our priorities and how we're going to get it done, because we can't just do it all through advocacy. We've got to do some of the heavy lifting ourselves, and that may be going into an area and financing it through debt as well. So just wanted to flag some important, interesting things that you wouldn't see unless you really knew about everything that was going on.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Does a seconder wish to speak? Councillor Champion.
I will, thank you, Mayor. Tonight is pick a public exhibition to speak at tonight. You've got about 4 you can choose from. Here's the first one. Agree, health is absolutely paramount. We would love for more of our residents to contribute to the consultations that we're holding over the next month. This is the time to comment. This is the time to provide detail. This is the time to let us know what you'd like to see. The think tank was fantastic. Again, a lot of information was presented by our residents. And so this just continues. So please, please, please contribute to one of these plans, starting with this one. And Lauren, we're looking forward to hearing your points, because I know you'll have lots. All right, thanks very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Champion. Does any other Councillor O'Kane?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm actually quite excited as a new councillor by this plan. While Lauren, you highlight that there may be or there could be a lot more detail in there, I'm also taking the approach that I'm now going to go through this because I'm looking to develop a kind of my strategic overview of what can happen in Olympia, and using this to actually really, as a structure, to really tease out what is possible and how it can be implemented very strongly within our area in the next 4 years. But also taking, I'd like to show gratitude, also say thank you to fellow councillors here that have come behind an effort to really get materialised a services hub for Olympia and for West Heidelberg in particular. That is going to be a huge piece in the overall changes that are coming towards West Heidelberg, as well as Heidelberg Heights and Belfield. We're going to experience an enormous amount of change, and looking forward to using this plan as a tool to really tease out how that's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Kane. Councillor Garotti.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity to comment. I'll sort of reserve some comments on the financial elements when we come to considering the draft budget, but just wanted to highlight that so this council is earmarked through the think tank process, discussions amongst ourselves, obviously feedback that we all gathered through the election process and through direct dialogue with our community, the following key priorities areas: financial sustainability, environmental action, local business support, advocating for our community needs, improving community assets and projects, health and wellbeing, and in these very difficult and challenging economic times, housing and homelessness. And I'm particularly proud that as a group, we've come together with our community and put housing and homelessness on the agenda for this council. For the first time that I can recall, as a resident of Banyule in 30 years, people are sleeping rough now within our neighbourhoods. People are sleeping rough in Greenwood Reserve. People have been sleeping rough in their cars within our local parks and reserves. For the first time that I can recall, people who we would term as middle class are fronting up to some of our key services, such as Bansick and Diamond Valley food. Things are tough at the moment, and so I'm really proud that in addition to focusing on our core business that we're elected to do, that we're going to try and do as much as we can within the resourcing that we have and through partnership with the other levels of government to help those most in need within our community. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Garotti. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Curry.
Thank you. Just quite quickly, thanks to the speakers. It's interesting that both speakers chose to talk on one of the plan's aspects, which is public health and wellbeing. I might repeat some of the comments that I made in the last meeting in response to the think tank recommendations. Public health and wellbeing is one of the areas that Council is looking at through a lens at all of our policies and plans. Some of the terminology that came out of the think tank included terms such as best health. I think we really need to use those terms in looking at what people aspire to and how that impacts different groups in our municipality. And I think we can go a long way to finding the people through this process that might not necessarily come to a council meeting. So we're also looking for some views. We might be reaching out to some specific groups, some targeted investment in community consultation to find those views that could potentially make the bigger impact, particularly in areas such as public health and wellbeing. And I'm looking forward to some of these other discussion points later in the meeting, which might give you some confidence that we're also looking at the environment. There's a couple of things later in the meeting that will show you our commitment to better environmental outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor McKern.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you to fellow councillors for your comments, all relevant, and I certainly don't want to be repeating what has already been said. When you look at the key initiatives that have been read out by Councillor Garotti, you start to appreciate the enormous remit that Council has and the broad range of services that it attempts to provide on what can be seen as a relatively limited budget, Council provides over 100 services to its community, and I think many people don't understand that. The health and wellbeing plan, I'm really glad that it was brought up tonight, and thank you to Lauren for raising it. I might just say that it was the Banyule health and wellbeing plan that drove the urban food initiative. The development of Council's first urban food strategy. I was aghast when I read the data in that plan on consumption of fresh fruit and vegetables, and realised that Banyule actually falls under the Melbourne metro average for consumption of fresh fruit and vegetables. It's not a statistic that you would equate with an area like Banyule, and it's through that particular strategy that we will now try to action change in terms of a healthy diet. I won't say much more other than what I think will be important going forward with delivering on these initiatives will be the inclusion of community. And the community advisory committees will be coming up to Council for consideration and adoption, and I'd certainly like to see as many of the community on those committees making a bona fide contribution to how we acquit our responsibilities on these initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKern. Does any other councillor wish to speak? I'm really proud to present the proposed Banyule plan for community feedback. Since being elected, myself and my fellow councillors have been taking in the priorities and ideas from the community and the existing work of council. I've also been impressed with the work of the Banyule think tank, who, after working together for 6 months, presented council with a series of recommendations, and the plan has been built around all of these elements to guide us. It's very complex. Banyule is a wonderful place. People love being here for the greenery, the community feel, the excellent services, the high quality services. We're facing challenges though, like every other council, just like other parts of the state, and we have to show, the things that we're going to focus on to the community. So in the Banyule plan, we've combined the community vision 2041 with the plan to make an even stronger vision, because it's stronger with the community. And the think tank also went to review and update some of the wording. So it's very, very specific and nuanced. My fellow councillors said a lot of what I was going to say. They listed a succinct list of priorities. But the delivery plan has 56 actions that will be delivered to meet the goals of the community vision. So we will report on this throughout the year. We'll be held to account to ensure that this is delivered. I now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 3.2, proposed budget and financial plan. I have to repeat this as I mentioned before, councillors. I invite anyone to identify any conflicts of interest, material or general, in relation to the endorsement of the proposed budget 25 to 29 to be released for public exhibition, and to describe the nature of the interest in accordance with the Local Government Act and the Banyule Governance Rules at item 3.2 on the agenda. So should any disclosures be forthcoming, Council will consider and determine upon the relevant project and associated funding in the budget prior to the proposed budget adoption at the 23rd of June Ordinary Council meeting. I will take the silence as there is no conflict. Moving to the speakers, we have 3 speakers on this item. An audio message will be played for Jeremy Richards from the Watsonia Traders Association, and he's speaking for the recommendation.
Good evening, Mayor, Councillors and community members. My name is Jeremy Richards and I'm the President of the Watsonia Traders Association. I also run Watsonia Optical, and I'm here tonight representing the 80+ local businesses that make up our community. First of all, I want to say thank you to Banyule Council for the advocacy funding we've received. It's been incredibly helpful during a time when we've all faced some real challenges with the Watsonia Town Square project, the North East Link and the M80 Ring Road construction. While we fully support the long-term vision for the Town Square and the positive impact it will have, we also need to acknowledge the tough road we've all been on. Many businesses have seen their revenue drop by 10 to 25%, and we've had to deal with extra cleaning costs, longer hours, and of course customer frustration with parking and access issues. There is definitely a significant element of what I'd call construction disruption fatigue, not just for us traders, but for the whole community. Some businesses have even had to close. These disruptions have been hard, but with the funding from Council, we've been able to respond strategically, and we're hopeful that this continued support will help us even more in the future. Our association is made up of volunteers, business owners who, just like our members, understand these challenges firsthand. The Committee of Management all run businesses in the area, and we put in our time because we deeply care about the future of Watsonia. We're always looking for new ways to help both traders and customers, whether that's working on parking issues, planning events, creating marketing initiatives, or supporting business development. We're always doing our best to represent and advocate for our traders. With the support of this funding, we've been able to do things like research the challenges our traders are facing, advocate for them, and run branding and promotional campaigns to help keep Watsonia's business community strong. We are grateful that Banyule Council supports local businesses with their unique and strong support of their various traders' associations. Looking ahead, we're really excited about the possibilities. Once the town square is completed, we'll be able to activate the space and bring the community back together. We'll host events and initiatives to drive engagement and support for local businesses. This isn't just about building infrastructure, it's about creating a thriving and connected community. On behalf of the Watsonia Traders Association, I want to thank you once again for your ongoing support. We look forward to working together to make Watsonia an even better place to do business and a place we can all be proud to call home. Thank you.
Okay, that was nice and clear. Our next speaker is Kevin Hill from Banyule Ratepayers Action Group, and he will address Council in person, and he's speaking against the recommendation. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. What else could I do? I guess I've got 2 minutes to talk about something that's taken you guys 4 months, 6 months and a whole lot of money to create, so I'll get right to the point. There's just a couple of technical things that I'd like to bring to the fore. We can't square the difference between the assumptions from the proceeds of sale of assets and the balance sheet. I'm just wondering if somebody could go back and have a look at that. Figures don't seem to line up. Also, I just want to signal the separation of the curbside waste out of the general rate, which is really going to slug those people who have got high value properties as opposed to those who have lesser value properties. And I note that there is an increase of some 67.52% in the public waste revenue, which is a massive increase. I'm not quite sure how that squares with the council's very welcome attitude to helping people in stress. But anyway, you can work that out, but it seems to me a bit like a Robin Hood strategy. If I could just come back to something that we don't see through the budget is the word efficiency or efficiency gain. And what we're wondering is where does that actually get a run in the budget? What efficiencies are going to be actually targeted? What numbers are going to be set? And over what time are they going to be achieved? The other matter is the fact that we've got an underlying deficit for the next 4 years, meaning that your revenues are less than your expenses, and we're told that that's going to come good. What we don't know is where the savings are coming from and when they're coming. So if that could be detailed in the timeline provided, that'd be excellent. And Councillor Gorotti knows where I'm coming to from that. And the last comment I just want to make is about human resources. There's more work to be done there, and I know the CEO is keen to see that improve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin, for your feedback. A written statement will now be read out on behalf of Melissa Murphy-Webster, who is speaking for the recommendation, by Natasha Swan, Director of City Development.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, it would be good to see the budget as a spreadsheet, which was possible a number of years ago to really see how money is being spent. The roads and footpath contractor expenses dropped nearly 25%. This is one area whereby if you make savings with the contractors, I believe you should utilise the savings to do more works. No resident has demanded less works on roads. Electricity, shouldn't it be projected for a reduction, not an increase? The public has been sold on electrification in one part to be cost savings. This has yet to be seen. With plant and motor vehicle operating, if there is a benefit to electrification, why is there a proposed 20% increase in operating this section of the council? Council should be doing all it can to reduce waste to work for residents, to prevent increases in rates. Proposed 3% and rubbish proposed 27%, including 67% public waste. So much for trusting a split in the rate. Rubbish would not be taken advantage of. The overall increase to residents will be 6%, much more than cap, assuming the supplementary rates are achieved. There seems to be big expectations on supplementary rates, 30%, 3% greater this budget. I understand the state government housing targets may impact this. It seems, however, to contradict the income contribution from capital works. The reason for being lower is there is, quote, a negative outlook of the property market in property development, end quote. Wages, 86 million, are all the roles vital to operations. Be great to see a breakdown of departments and the roles within them. Lastly, can it be checked under the initiative program budget to confirm the Marrigill implementation and activation is 177,000? I recall seeing the strategy being budgeted for 38,000 late last year.
Thank you for reading out the statement. Councillors, there is an officer report before you. Councillor Grotti.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to move, but I believe there are a few amendments. Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Thanks.
So happy to move as per officer recommendations 1 and 2. A new point 3 to note the economic challenges outlined in the proposed budget 2025 to 2029, to consider a target for a minimum 35 million net cash from operations across the financial years 2025-26 to 2028-29. Points 5 and 6 as is, and then point 7, consider adopting the budget financial plan following community feedback at its ordinary council meeting scheduled for 23 June 2025, confirming the document review program. So moved, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Grotti. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor De Pasquale. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just obviously we're putting out the budget for consultation now, and we've already heard some feedback. Just from a procedural perspective, I just encourage Bragg with those questions to submit them in writing so officers can look at providing a response. And in regard to a question raised by Melissa Murphy-Webster, I've asked if the officers can look at making available the schedules in the budget in an Excel format on the website, just to ease community engagement with the budget. The budget delivers on the council plan, and we just heard in our earlier item just what a comprehensive plan that is and how many services that it touches on and the impact that it has on our community. Just wanted to highlight some financial elements. So we will be delivering a surplus as a council, a headline surplus. So we will continue to run a surplus. The days of deficit and debt are long behind this council. From a debt perspective, council debt will reduce to 16.6 million. That is less than 8% of the total revenue of the council. And just as a comparison point, this time 12 years ago, we were looking at 40% debt as a percentage of revenue, and the council was looking to have to apply to the state government treasurer at the time for consideration to continue to run effectively as a council. The interest expense as a percentage of revenue is 0.7%. And just by way of benchmark, the Victorian state government is spending 4.8% of its revenue on interest, and the average of Australian governments is about 5.2%. So the council is putting as much of the rate dollar and resident dollar into services as possible. We've got a healthy cash in the bank of $70 million. So what this means is that the council is in a very sound financial position, and we know that we're in challenging times economically. Our message to our staff is that we trust in you to continue to run the council responsibly and soundly and to deliver your services. And we've got the sound financial backing to be able to make a commitment to our staff that we can honour you, that you can go forward in confidence. Because we know for a lot of people at the moment, whether you're in the private sector economy and even in the public sector, that the job security is tough. So we're able to offer that as a council because we're running efficiently, we're delivering good quality services, our debt and deficit is in control. There's of course more work to do, but I think as a new council, this is a solid starting point. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Grotti. Does the seconder wish to speak?
Mayor, yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Grotti. Just to mention also, Mayor, that come April, we will be looking for submitters for the budget as well. Submissions to the budget from the community isn't a legal obligation, so we have continued to make sure that the community get an opportunity to have talk to the budget, whether they're making a submission or have any other feedback as well. So please be part of that. We normally get about 40 submitters or 40 to 50 submitters per annum. If it gets less and less, we'll probably have to look at another way. So, please engage in that, everyone in the community. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor De Pasquale. Councillor Wood?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I've got some comments. Actually, I have a question for one of the directors as well. Sorry, I didn't hear you ask for questions. I beg your pardon. For Director Gilio, I wonder if we could just get your opinion on item 4 that's proposed there.
Through you, Mayor, I'm presuming whether that's achievable by the council. I think if that's the question, yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the targets that is not unachievable, but what we're looking at as far as addressing the underlying deficit is to increase our cash from operations, and that's probably one of the things that we will be targeting to address that issue. Having a target set at 35 is not unachievable by this council, but with a lot of hard work in looking at both revenue streams and also expenses to be able to deliver on that particular minimum.
Thank you. I should have spoke more to the risk of it, but I'll take your comments. It's in hand, so that's fine. So just a couple of general comments. The budget and financial plan for this one and the next couple that are coming, it's difficult for a new incoming councillor to get involved and influence the process. There's a lot of rolling agendas and priorities already in play here, so I look forward to having a greater say in this going forward. Acknowledging previous councils and the administration that have delivered the statistics that Councillor Grotti eloquently put across there, it's a real credit in a tough environment. We do have an underlying deficit going forward. We've inherited part of that through COVID, but we do have an overcommitted capital expenditure coming up. So this group does need to be prudent, officers included. We need to be prudent going forward. We're going to need to be showing real leadership in our fiscal leadership and management of the accounts going forward. There's some difficult infrastructure conversations coming our way. They won't be able to be deferred down the line, and so they'll be dealt with through this term. So there are some challenges ahead, but with the comments that have been made previously, I think we're in good shape to deliver a good result for our ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Does any other councillor wish to speak? I'm not sure if that look is a yes. Deputy Mayor.
Little bit, yeah. Yeah, look, we've got challenging times ahead with rate capping. The other two levels of government certainly aren't capping their tax intake, but they're also running massive deficits as well, so or massive debts. But we don't have debt now, but we've funded some of our major infrastructure projects a number of years ago. We don't have any major infrastructure projects fully funded. We've only allocated portions of the significant capital works to the forward budgets. So we really need to be thinking about how we're going to deliver the next big important infrastructure projects for our council. There's a lot of unfunded projects, and with rate capping in place, it's going to be very challenging. So these are some really important questions that we've got to be going through, and I put it into the council plan discussion before because we've got conflicting priorities there. So the question is, would we have been better off going to debt in the past years before inflation hit and the costs of delivering projects have absolutely skyrocketed? If we delivered projects earlier and went to debt earlier, we wouldn't now have a massive $40 million cost to deliver a swimming pool upgrade. It would have been massively lower. So we've got to get away from slogans to doing real work, and you can never anticipate what's lying ahead, what the inflation levels are going to be, all sorts of things. And so we've got to be realistic about what we're going to deliver for our community and how we're going to go about doing it. So I just want to flag that, but also acknowledge the tremendous amount of work that our office have gone into running this council in a good financial position where we are today.
Thank you, Councillor Castaldo. And as you all know, the budget is what enables us to deliver on the Banyule plan that was just presented. So without a strong financial foundation, we can't deliver on the plan and the community's visions. We're proud of, as mentioned, Banyule's strong financial management. This budget, you know, is coming at a time where the economic outlook is still challenging, and that persistent inflation that we're experiencing in this country is putting pressure on the council budget and our community's households' budgets as well. Demand for services such as food relief, you know, is amazing to me that people in this community still need that, as households are still grappling with the cost of living stress. Council's main source of funding is rates revenue, and as you know, there's the cap set by the Victorian Government. The rate income is increasing by 3% for the 2025-2026 financial year, and this increase is still below the Consumer Price Index, and that's been the case for many years. You have to take that into consideration. In light of these financial pressures, our focus is still on maintaining services that our community expects and upgrading them while managing debt. It's a really tough balance. We're looking at ways to do that. We're looking to find savings and efficiencies. We need to diversify and expand in ways to raise revenue. That is really tough for councils to do, but we're looking to do that. We're proud that we remain in a secure and sustainable position while delivering projects. So happy to put this out tonight. Just in time. Put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Moving to item 3.3, proposed asset plan 2025 to 35. There are no speakers on this item. There's an officer report. Is there a question, Councillor Champion? Are you ready to move? Moved, Councillor Champion.
Sorry, Mayor,
sorry.
I think it's moving with amendments, Councillor.
Okay. Moving with an amendment, Councillor Champion.
Okay. Proposed asset plan 25 to 2035 that Council 1 as is, 2 as is, 3 as is, 4. Consider adopting the asset plan 2025 to 2035 following community feedback at its ordinary council meeting scheduled for the 23rd of June 2025, confirming the document review program. So moved, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconded by Councillor Garotti.
Thank you very much, Mayor. This is right up there with the finance plan, by the way. This is one of our key responsibilities, our assets. In Sherborne Ward last term, a lot of projects were completed, completed. And I'm very grateful for all the contribution that my community provided, as well as the officer contribution to the projects. And I thought I was done. And now I've had residents during the election campaign come to me and say, "Hey, Alison, what about this?" And I've gone, "That's a great idea. Let's do that too." So those are going into their assets. So there's more ideas coming, more projects coming. And this is a great opportunity for everyone in Banyule to be able to do the same thing. So if you see anything that can be improved, maybe safety, this is an opportunity to do that. But please have a little look at the asset plan, a little bit of bedtime reading, have a look at it. And if you can see something missing, let us know. I do really think, though, we do very much care for our assets. We look after them well, and we do value your contribution. So please contribute. Again, forum on the 15th of April is another opportunity to participate and to share with us where you see something is missing and would like to contribute and see it in the next the asset plan for the next 2025 to 2035. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Champion. Councillor Garotti.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I'll just pick up on the little amendment to point number 4. And we're doing that with all the plans that are being adopted tonight because as they've currently been proposed by officers, they'd just be tabled this year and then would not come up for formal review again to either the council or to the community. And we just wanted to check that as a councillor group and say to our CEO, well, let's look at that. Let's look at what the review schedule is because the rating plan, the asset plan, our hardship plan, they're critical plans, and potentially have them only come to the community once in a 4-year cycle is potentially not the best use of community input over a 4-year term. The council has over $2.1 billion in assets and $2 billion in property, plant and equipment. I was actually a little bit interested that no one from the community commented on this, including the Banyule Ratepayers Action Group, because this particular plan actually articulates the service levels that council will deliver on all its key assets: roads, footpaths, drains, buildings, parks and open spaces. So this plan in effect informs the level of investment that we'll put in to what people would say are core council services over the next 4 years. And I just wanted to give the public a little bit of a flavour of some of the considerations that councillors have raised when we've been given the plan. For example, under footpaths, under the proposed plan, footpaths that are average will remain under 40% of the total. But we've asked the question, what additional funding is required over the next year to improve this to 33% of the total? Roads, as an example, will in fact decline from poor and very poor from 8% of the total to 9%. What funding is required to get all our roads better than poor or very poor under 5%? So across all the asset categories, as councillors, we've raised queries with our officers, and that will be looked into as part of the consultation process. And potentially as a council, we'll then look to increase the service levels for assets, which will then have quite material budget implications. But I would just remind the community and our key stakeholders that this is actually the key document that informs all the service levels on what people call core services around roads and footpaths. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Garotti. Councillor Di Pasquale.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to close that off, just with regards to time, that what was mentioned there by Councillor Grotti also did entail drains, which we're looking at those who are poor to very poor and how to bring those up to standard. Buildings also, and the percentage of those who are under average condition, parks and open space. So there's much in there that we're actually looking to our assets, and we did in the past have to were challenged many years ago as well by the asset renewal gap. We did bridge that gap by many initiatives in the past, and now we're sort of seeing that through and trying to keep that as small as possible. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Di Pasquale. Councillor O'Kane.
Thank you, Mayor. Just really quickly, I'd probably just build on your comment, Councillor Champion, that we do have some well-kept and maintained assets, but in some areas they're not as well kept and maintained. And also I think trying to get into this asset plan some initiatives about how we can actually improve that, particularly around dumping footpath quality. I think in my area is a considerable safety issue for us. So I'm also going to ask our community as well. I'm out there and walking the streets and taking photographs and driving some people crazy, I think. But if anybody else is out there in our area and can take and contribute to what we need to do in our area, that's also, and contacting me about it, that also would be very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Kane. Councillor Castaldo.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank some of the councillors, Councillor Garotti, for raising some of the, if we vary the level of service on some of those areas of provision over the 10 years, some of the numbers we've received for some of those small tweaks is over $125 million cost over 10 years. So there's a tremendous amount that can be spent to deliver things, depending on what people's priorities are. What are our priorities? Where do we focus our expenditure? And very good conversations, really helpful to have some of those questions available for our community to think about, because I think a lot of people have different views on where we should be spending our money. So I'm really keen to see the community feedback, what their priorities are, whether they're quite in line with what officer recommendations are, and what the think tank are saying. There's a lot of things that could cost our community massively, so we've got to get it right. So this is a really important time for our community to say what their priorities are.
Thank you, Councillor Castaldo. So all the councillors have said something a little bit different about this plan, like pulling out the roads and the drains and footpaths. I'd also like to pull out a few things like support for our traders, you know, keeping local businesses viable, providing affordable memberships like at Watermark. So, you know, having a healthy health and fitness option is accessible to all residents. I'd like to also mention we'd love to attract more grant funding so that we can ensure that we can provide all of these things to our residents. And we are very good at getting our act together in this space, ensuring that we've got all the plans so that we have ready-made projects to present to state and federal government. Put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 3.4, Revenue and Rating Plan for Public Exhibition. Okay, I think I've just said the wrong thing then. There are no speakers on this item. There's an officer report before you, and I'm now calling for a motion. Moved, Councillor Garotti, seconded, Councillor Curry.
Just to confirm, Councillor or Mayor, we're moving as per the amendment. So on point number 2, there'll be the inclusion of a table that shows the multiplier of the differential rates in relation to the residential improved rate. And in addition to point number 5, regarding the document review program. Thank you, Mayor. So moved.
Thank you, councillor. And the seconder was with the amendments. Happy to second with the amendments. Thank you, councillor. Councillor Grolli, do you wish to speak?
No, very briefly, good plan, comprehensive. I think it's just important that we include those. So the differential rates are where for different types of property, for example, vacant land, I believe we charge twice the rate that we do on a developed property, and that's to try and incentivise the market to do something with the land rather than leave it vacant. So we think it's useful to include those differentials in the plan because at the moment they're buried deep in the budget document. So at least we bring everything into one plan and it's really clear. But for those in the community, that's what the differential rates are. And we set them to try and incentivise certain behaviours. And then I suppose the other thing is that I believe it is important that we look at having this plan come back for a review because there are some live discussions happening at the moment. As we know, within the community, council decides to levy the cost of our waste through a rate, whereas other councils do so through a charge, and indeed some of my colleagues here believe in a charge. So we can continue to have those conversations with our community over the coming years. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Grolli. Does the seconder wish to speak?
Thank you. Just very briefly, I concur with Councillor Garotti and those comments. I expect that we're going to hear a number of speakers talk about this on the 15th of April when it comes back to Council. I think Council can do a little bit of work in this space. I really agree with that comment about incentivising the right sort of behaviours and use of land. I think behind the scenes we might explore a couple of options that potentially might come back to council as a notice of motion, and more to come on that. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Curry. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Castaldo.
Yeah, I'll also be supporting these changes. Very good changes. Thank you, councillor Garotti. Number 2 is a really important action. A number of people in our community are advocating for better utilisation of a number of the shops in Eaglemont Village. We hear it at the Mall. We also hear it in Greensborough. Vacant properties left vacant for long periods of time. Unless we push them to activate those shop fronts, we're going to have challenges to bring the life to our activity centres that is really essential. So the very good recommendation, I'll be speaking to my community about that. And also it's really important, part 5 as well, coming back to council. I know I'm one of the councillors that are really keen to see a charge rather than a rate applied to the waste charges. And I think that's really essential as well to deliver incentivising good behaviours. So I'll be supporting all these changes this evening.
Thank you, councillor Castaldo. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor McKern.
I'd just like to speak briefly to the waste charge as opposed to rate. It is something that we have discussed quite extensively in the last term of council. With our waste minimisation, zero waste target that this council is pursuing, I believe that the charge has more potential to reduce waste and waste production. And I'd like to think that we can revisit that, given that that was the main aim of our zero waste strategy, was to actually reduce the amount of waste that is being produced residentially. So one of the ways we talked about that was to actually introduce a charge based on the size of bin that that a household might utilise. So the smaller the bin, the smaller the charge for the bin, thus incentivising less waste production. But unfortunately, what was actually adopted was a rate charge based on property value. I'd like to actually think that we can review and revise that in this term of council and look to what was the main target of the exercise, reducing the amount of waste that we as residents produce.
Thank you, councillor McKern. Does any other councillor wish to speak? I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? It is carried. Item 3.5, proposed rate financial hardship assistant policy for public exhibition. Councillor Garotti has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just a question for the appropriate officer. But are officers aware of any other council in Victoria, or even for that matter, the country, that have an equivalent hardship policy in place where waivers are provided to those facing hardship? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Garotti, the Director of Finance.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I'm not aware of any other council that has a policy to the extent that Banyule City Council does. This provides a really good relief for those that are in need, and it is targeted. And we're quite proud of it as far as officers are concerned as well. But I'm not aware of any other council having a comprehensive, well thought out, structured, supportive policy. They do have the opportunity to provide waivers and relief under the Local Government Act, but I don't believe there's a policy as generous as this one.
Thank you, Director Gilio. Are there any other questions? Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor Garotti, seconded Councillor De Pasquale. Councillor Garotti?
Yeah, very happy to be putting this out for consultation. I think the average waiver now is up to a maximum of 33% of the rates of a property, capped at $533. So we've indexed that amount, and that's a commitment now from this council, so that we'll continue to index the amount of waiver relief that's available. But this is how we deliver support, financial relief and support for those in our community. I know that there are organisations out there, for example, at the state level, Council Watch, calling for things like rate freezes. We've taken the view that the responsible thing to do is to work within the cap, but to recognise that there are people in our community who are facing hardship. And so let's target that support and target that relief to those who need it when they need it. That's why I'm particularly pleased with this policy. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Garotti. Councillor De Pasquale.
No, thank you, Mayor. Just to mention that this hardship assistance is aimed and focused where it's needed, especially. The ability to apply is very easy. Staff are very helpful too, to take people who sometimes with very sensitive information through this process very easily. So it's on offer to all residents. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor O'Kane.
Just a very quick comment that I note that the uptake of the hardship policy was increased over 24-25 to date compared to 23-24. So I think it really highlights how much it is needed, and very grateful also that we're deciding to continue it on for the 4 years. And also I'd like to note how widespread it is across the entire of Banyule, and that, I think that really illustrates, demonstrates its need. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Kane. Councillor Champion.
Thanks, Mayor. Just very briefly, this is, as we said, this is a targeted assistance. Anybody is welcome to go and learn a bit about how to apply. I actually have tried this on about 3 occasions. On one occasion, I could have applied for it. I didn't, but I could have applied. Last year, I went through the checking system and the point system, and I didn't meet the criteria. So my income changes every year. So I would suggest have a go, have a look. Do you meet the criteria? If you do, apply. And as we've been saying on several occasions, not just tonight, there are a lot more people in our communities that are struggling. We're seeing them more at our food outlets. They're certainly people that we would like to see apply for this. So give it a go, have a little look. If you meet the criteria, please apply. You might be surprised. And I'm very proud to be able to support this. I will be supporting this, obviously. And this was introduced in 2021. So this is the second 4-year term that we have that we're actually providing this for our community. So, and I'm very proud to be able to do that for us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Does any other councillor wish to speak? I've got nothing further to add. It was summed up well from my fellow councillors. I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 3.6, adoption of community local law. There are 5 speakers on this item. Susan Martin will address council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. Thank you, Susan.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and councillors. I'd like to speak specifically about backyard fire pits, safety, placement, and what can safely be burned. Under the local laws, it's covered under Part 7, resident responsibilities in the draft document, and Part 9, public health. I wonder why there's no mention of a 3-metre clearance from flammable material or structures consistent with Fire Rescue Victoria recommendations. Fire Rescue Victoria Community Safety Directorate say local council is responsible for laws and enforcement. Bunnings, the largest hardware retailer in Australia, says regarding fire pits, they direct customers to local council regulations for safe usage of this product, as do many other retailers. Part 9, public health, in relation to outdoor heating devices or fire pits. Smoke. What the draft document says is an owner or occupier must not cause or allow smoke that, in the opinion of an authorised officer, is considered unreasonable or dangerous to health and safety. After 5 p.m. on a weekend or public holiday, how does a resident contact an authorised officer regarding smoke? What's the after-hours number? If the authorised officer can't attend, how does a resident prove nuisance from smoke or risk to health and safety? Other local councils in Victoria and indeed around Australia have laws regarding fire pits. Fire Rescue Victoria, Bunnings and other retailers request that council have laws for the safe use of backyard fire pits and what can and cannot be burned in these devices. To this end, I respectfully request a motion to defer, put the matter aside for further consideration and vote at a later date. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Susan. A written statement will now be read out by Joseph Tobacco, Director of Community Wellbeing, on behalf of Jessie Walton and Reese Allen, who are for the officer recommendation.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I would like to thank Council for reviewing their local law and the officers involved. I did, however, want to submit to the council laws that there is a precedent amongst other councils for burning off, specifically having a fire in your own backyard. Please see 3.2 of City of Whittlesea's local law that was reviewed in 2024, specifically 3.2, Part 2, Part B. 3.2, open air burning. A person must not light or allow to remain alight any fire in the open air on a day that has been declared as a total fire ban or smog alert day, otherwise contravenes the provisions of the Country Fire Authority Act 1958 or the Fire Rescue Victoria Act 1958. Penalty of 20 penalty units. 2. A person must not, without a permit, light, burn or cause or allow to be burnt a fire in the open air on any land less than 20,000 square metres in area in the municipality except for the purposes of cooking food outdoors. 10 penalty units. The restriction in subclause 2 does not apply to A permanent or portable gas barbecue, solid fuel barbecue, pizza oven or other properly constructed appliance for the purpose of cooking food, or B, a fire in a chiminea, properly constructed fireplace or fire pit for the purpose of an outdoor heating. If the councillors could please consider allowing residents to have open air burning provided it is in a properly constructed fire pit as Whittlesea has. Otherwise, we are saying that it is more dangerous to have a controlled fire here than in Whittlesea, which does not make sense. I appreciate the council's consideration on the matter and that common sense will prevail.
Thank you. A written statement will now be read out by Greg Gale, Acting Director of Assets and City Services, on behalf of Fenton Roffey, who is for the recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor. Local Banyule resident of 46 years. I believe we should definitely be able to have an open fire in the backyard. There is something about friends, family and neighbours around a warm fire sipping oak beers that is just magical. All in favour, say aye. Hear, hear.
That's the shortest ever. Thank you. Okay, sorry. Roger Fife will address council in person and he's speaking against the recommendation. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. I'm looking for the smoking gun. In the case of shopping trolley punitive penalties that are going to be introduced under this local law without any mention of changing customer behaviour, which is the cause of the problem. If we go to infringement penalties, if for trolleys 415, a person 2 units, no fine since 2015. Great job. 3B, a retailer must ensure no trolley of the business is left. For an individual, 5 units, I don't know how they define them. Corporation, 10 units for each offence. 3C, demonstrate a regular collection system to council satisfaction. Define satisfaction. 10 units. And what is the impoundment fee, which is provided and described in the process summary of officers in determining how they would set these penalties. So we get to the trolleys. They're impounded. The truck picks up 5 trolleys. Is that 50 penalty units or 10 penalty units for picking up impounded trolleys? Community consultation does not justify such punitive penalties. If you actually go to the consultation, you will see there are 3 quotes. Trolleys are provided by retailers to make our shopping experience more efficient and convenient. It isn't their fault that people disrespect. I'm sick and tired of trolleys being dumped in the local streets, although not the retailer's fault. The current rules suffice. These unwarranted laws introduce coin deposit trolleys, place new costs on local businesses that will undoubtedly be borne by resident consumers. So the consultation does not justify those units. The officer's summary says, in preparing these local laws, reasonable penalties. These penalties are not reasonable, they are punitive, and officers to exercise discretion. I leave it to you, councillors, to ask officers how they will exercise discretion and how they will calculate the punitive penalties. Thank you.
Thank you,
unless
Roger.
there are any questions. No.
Thank you, Roger. Pippa Griffith will address council in person. And he's speaking against the recommendation. Thank you, Pippa.
Thank you. Much of this proposed law is to be commended, as it is much improved on the previous one. But some things are missing, and in some areas it raises more questions than it answers, which is why I'm speaking against it. In no particular order, the gender impact assessment appears to be thorough, and the officer's report includes a number of recommendations, but it seems these are too late. How can an advisory group be established to have input to a law that is to come into effect next month and run for the next 10 years? Are you anticipating amendments to the laws following input from such a group? Moving to item 6.4F is new, but it was not mentioned in the survey. It's about not parking a vehicle in an area which is not designated for parking. The reason for this is not explained anywhere, so what's it about and why is it necessary? Schedule 3 of the law is the Register of Significant Trees, but this list ends at tree 420. The website linked to the current list was updated late last year. That list finishes with number 861. So half the current list is actually missing from this documentation. What is the point of including an incomplete list rather than a link to the current up-to-date document? Regarding tree and vegetation protection on private land, why is there no requirement for a sign to be erected describing what vegetation is being protected? The community could assist with monitoring this, but we can't do this effectively if we don't have the relevant information. A penalty of 20 times $193 and a few cents is less than $4,000. This does not truly represent the value of a large tree and will not be a deterrent. Why isn't the penalty for damage to vegetation higher? And instead of the bond being refunded within 12 months, why can't it be retained for at least 12 months? As it can be some time before damage to vegetation becomes obvious, particularly for deciduous trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Pippa. Councillors, there's an officer report before you. Councillor Castaldo.
Just got a question for the relevant officer that can possibly answer some of the questions posed there. The first one is, what is the maximum amount through the tree bond for a large tree that could be put into a bond?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. So the tree bond is calculated using the amenity value calculation that's been adopted through our urban forest strategy. So it really does depend on the quality and amenity value of the tree. We're advised from our RS team that could be as low as $400 for a low quality tree. It could be as high as several $100,000 for a really large and substantial high amenity tree. So part of the bond clause there requires officers to consider what's the right sort of bond for the right sort of works and the right sort of tree. It's a fair risk assessment, but the bonds themselves are quite substantial and significant.
And just another very quick one, might be a bit harder. The parking of a vehicle on a non-designated location, we had over 750 pages in the briefings, so I didn't identify that one.
Yeah, so if I could clarify, the purpose of that clause is to cover off the differences between where we control parking on council roads and declared road land. So if we had, for example, a resident who was able to access a portion of parkland or something like that and park their vehicle, the local law would be a power that we might use to prevent that unlawful parking from happening. Because it's not a declared road, it wouldn't be covered under the Road Management Act as most parking infringements would be.
Councillor McKern.
Through you, Mayor, I'd like to ask the Director of City Development whether in adopting the community local laws for this evening, given some of the responses or some of the questions and statements made in relation to shopping trolleys and open fires, it concerns me that perhaps there's more work to be done in terms of those two local laws. Would it be possible to perhaps pull those out for further consideration?
Through you, Mayor. So the current local law has been through a community consultation and legal certification process. It's certainly up to council if they wish to remove any provisions. They're certainly able to do so, and the current process and legal certification would still be valid. We would then have a gap in the local law in relation to the management of shopping trolleys and the management of open fires, which is currently proposed to be managed through the local law as drafted. The local law sunsets in April, so it would be unlikely we would be able to complete the revised consultation and legal certification processes, so we would just have no law in place through that period.
Councillor Curry.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I'd like to address the speakers. Thanks for your questions. I'm going to work from back to front. So in relation to the supermarket trolleys, could we have an answer to Mr Fyfe's question on what those penalty points mean in relation to the collection of trolleys?
Director Swan.
Certainly, through you, Mayor. So we're introducing a penalty unit that applies to shopping trolleys that are found outside of the retailer's managed area. This would enable council, should they choose to fine a retailer for not managing their shopping trolleys and keeping them at bay. We've spoken previously to council that we tend to operate in an educative process first. So it'd certainly be our intention to work with the retailers to give them adequate time to put practices in place for the management of shopping trolleys. But certainly these infringements would be available to council per shopping trolley for any retailers who didn't see it as their responsibility to manage unreasonable dumping of trolleys occurring from their shops.
Thank you, and I'll continue on. So 3 submissions on fire pits are the topic of interest tonight. So I might start with if a fire was to occur in an open space that wasn't in accordance with the guidelines that are currently proposed, what would council's actions be?
Thank you for the question, through you, Mayor. I guess first, by way of clarification, the local law as drafted does enable the use of a fire pit, but within a device that's intended for that use. So something that's actually constructed rather than perhaps digging a hole in the ground and having a sort of uncontrolled open fire. And certainly it's perhaps some of the more technical terminology in the local law that makes it a bit hard to find that, and something that we'll certainly ensure we have guidance on council's website as to how to understand that local law. So it's controlled, I guess, in 2 parts in the local law around the safety matters. So we have a requirement, firstly, that they be in a controlled device that's purpose-built for that design. And secondly, we have a clause in relation to the condition of land, particularly clause 7.21b, that talks about dangerous land. So any activities that would cause danger to any personal property is something that we can also manage through the local law. It gives, I guess, from our perspective, a more performance-based approach to ensuring that fire pits are in a safe location. We could certainly think there may be instances where your separation distance of 3 metres, which is the fire guidelines, might be met, but it may still be dangerous. So we prefer this performance approach. And we have other clauses in the local law and also our Public Health and Wellbeing Act that we administer that manage things like smoke and other things. So if people are burning something in the fire pit that causes excessive smoke, we've got powers that could prevent that. So if that instance occurs, we do have some after-hours support that's available, but certainly it is not uncommon for us to require monitoring to be undertaken, the use of the fire pit at certain times so we can observe how it operates to make sure that it's been operating properly, and that would be the same for chimneys and other devices that emit smoke.
Thank you. I think that covered many of the questions that were ongoing from there, so that was fantastic. Thank you. And I guess the last question, if a resident was to call on council to take action where they believe they were impacted by smoke or embers or any what they would consider toxic fumes, could council issue a notice on the spot for breach, or what is the strongest action that they could take in that particular scenario?
Well, certainly certain actions have penalty units ascribed to them, but council's also able to prosecute an operator or landowner who causes ongoing patterns of disruption through those. So the penalty unit is one option, but we also have powers of prosecution under the local law more generally through the courts.
Thank you. Any other questions? Now's the best time. No? Seeking a mover. Moved Councillor McKern. Do I have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Wood. Councillor McKern, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. And I must say, I would like to thank the speakers too who've spoken quite passionately about fire pits and shopping trolleys. I do need to apologise though, having heard the director's replies to some of your concerns. I am satisfied with the responses received and would not wish to forfeit having laws at this time on what are two important items in our community. And I'd also like to thank everyone who provided feedback to the proposed community local laws. There was actually extensive community consultation on this last year. And given that they are reviewed every 10 years, it's important that that level of consultation is undertaken. And why do we change them? Because we need to continue to meet changing community needs, which do change over time. And that leads me to two areas of the local laws that I want to focus on. They've been very important matters to my community, and that is tree protection on private property and nature strip planting. The proposed local law 3.13, trees on building sites, this is a really big ticket item for our community. According to the survey, 64% of the community believe that property owners should be paying a security bond to the council to safeguard against destruction or damage to trees on private property during construction works on the site, I might add. I will definitely be supporting this. Council takes canopy trees very seriously. We've adopted targets for 30% canopy cover in this municipality and need to understand that we cannot just rely on trees in public spaces to achieve that 30%. Trees in public open space only covers about 6 square kilometres of our municipality, which overall has a kilometre coverage of 63 square kilometres. So that gives you an idea as to how much we must rely on protection of trees and planting of trees on private property if we're to achieve 30% coverage, which has been determined is the requirement for a healthy environment in our suburbs. And the other one is proposed local law 6.6, planting on nature strips. I've had so many complaints from residents who've wanted to plant something other than lawn and trees. The time has come for us to review that, and with the guidelines that are being prepared, I think we'll find, thanks to 75% of the community who want more flexible arrangements on our nature strips, that we will be providing for that. So I'm actually very excited by some of the new proposed local laws, and thank the officers and also fellow councillors for extensive discussion on these particular items.
Thank you, Councillor McKern. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I've had a good read through the laws, and I'm comfortable that they're appropriate for the time. Obviously, a hot topic there with the fires. So what we've heard tonight from our director is being in a controlled device, the condition of the land. If fires are done properly, they are a good thing. I am an avid smoker of meats and so forth. So this is close to my heart. But most of it is, and I should say, we also have nuisance laws that apply here, that if you are being a nuisance in your neighbourhood, we have got grounds to pursue. But it's about being a good neighbour. If the wind's blowing in a particular direction, I'm not burning my fire. It's as simple as that. I just don't want to pick a fight with my neighbour. So, we hope that common sense does prevail. The nature strips, certainly supportive to see the ability to plant onto nature strips. I think that's a positive step in our area. With the trees, the council group have done a lot of work talking about the trees and tree protection. We had an incident which I'll talk about specifically, 31 Horton Parade in Rosanna. Disgraceful circumstance where those involved vandalised and took down trees without permission there. There were some part of our law that we could pursue, but it was light on for mine and the community's expectation. So we're doing a lot of work in this space, and I think we've got commitment from all the councillors and the officers for that regard in protecting what's important to our area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Curry.
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, remember the days when we could light fires in the gutters and nobody blinked an eyelid? Those days long and truly gone. I suspect a few people still out there doing that, but not in Banyule. We'll come and do something about it. I think we want to be good neighbours, don't we? As we get the density of our neighbourhood increases, we're living closer together, we're impacting each other a bit more. And unfortunately, we have to have guidelines because it's just for the few people that just think their own convenience outweighs any impact to their neighbours. So I think we do have to be very concerned for these impacts. I'm satisfied that we can't always get it perfectly right, that sometimes our tools are a little bit blunt. And at this stage, I'm not ready to defer an item for one particular clause in this. It was a very big topic to deal with, so I possibly will go over my 2 minutes. But I would not like to defer this document, given that it gives us so many benefits in all the other areas, and I thank the other councillors for their comments, which I concur with. But I do think that when people have troublesome neighbours and they are impacted by smoke, please report it. Even if it is a one-off situation, it's better for us to have a record of those incidents, and repeat offenders we can take stronger action with. So I'm sorry it's potentially not 100% perfect, but let's see how we go, and the next time it comes to council we'll review those laws again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Garotti.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. These local laws are a long time coming, councillors, so I think it's come up once in my time on council in 12 years. So that might be something that we have to look at as a council, or at least providing an opportunity for interim review or input, because things are dynamic. And we need to be responsive to that. But one thing I'm pleased about in the local law is how we're toughening up, strengthening the enforcement of untidy properties, and very pleasingly untidy nature strips. So that is a massive bugbear, certainly in the neck of the woods that I represent, but I think in many, many parts of the city. And so finally now, through our local laws, we're toughening up. We're toughening up on behalf of our community. Banyule is known as having high amenity, clean, livable, presentable neighbourhoods. We want to maintain that, and in fact in some areas we want to improve it. And in some areas we want to improve it back to where it was. So these laws give us the teeth to do that. And I'm very pleased about that, and I'm hoping to see some tangible outcomes, certainly in my community and across the city. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Castaldo.
I'd just like to, first of all, acknowledge the amount of work that's gone into this review. We've got two officers sitting over there at the wall, Justine Busuttil and Noel Sheehy, that have worked on this, and particularly Justine that's worked in this area that goes unthanked a lot of the time. It's very challenging. I want to acknowledge the significant work for many years in this space. Thank you. These are challenging environments. They upset the people that get the fines, but they upset people that aren't when they're not getting fined as well. So it's a really tough environment. I'm really excited about a few of them around the smoking areas. There's some beefed up areas to make more smoke-free areas. Not as strong as I'd like to see, but we've got to change other laws to do that. But on the two issues that Councillor McKern rose as well, about the tree bonds, absolutely. That's so important. There's all sorts of times before a planning permit and construction management that very important trees are so vulnerable and they're not being cared for, and in some cases intentionally damaged so that they're withdrawn, in my view. So this is a really important step forward to protecting trees under certain circumstances. Planning does it on other occasions. The other one is this nature strip planting policy. It's overwhelming support for Wetland too, and some things make small impacts, other things can make tremendous impacts into the character of an area. This is one of those, in my view. We're working on an urban forest. It's an important strategy. And we're going to have a meeting for the community to participate on Wednesday night to get involved with these nature strip planting opportunities. And it's going to go out to the community for a review from the 17th of March. So we haven't articulated here what the rules are, but that's coming. I think it's really important for the character of Banyule moving forward, the opportunities that this area presents us. And so there's a bunch of very exciting things in here. And Councillor Garotti mentioned it hasn't been here for a very long time. So I'm glad it's here now. I think we've improved a number of things really well. So I'm excited to pass this one tonight. I don't want to delay.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Champion.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, just a big thank you to all our residents who contributed to this, however you contributed. This is a big one. Again, this hasn't changed in many, many years, so well done to Justine, who is sitting behind me. This has been a very, very big job for her, and I expect a learning curve and management. I grew up with an incinerator in the backyard and a really big compost bin. The compost bin has survived, the incinerator hasn't. So that was ruled out in about the late 1970s, if I remember rightly. This was in New South Wales. We don't miss the incinerator at all. So we were up from the gutter, Alicia. We didn't burn in the gutter. We burnt in incinerators. But I certainly welcome a lot of the thoughts and the input and the consideration our community has contributed to this, and I welcome a lot of the improvements and modifications, and especially the tree bond that was being referred to by Councillor Alita and Councillor Peter. That will be there will be some interesting conversations around that, because a lot of people come here for the trees and the space. So that will be an interesting one to follow up. But I'm looking forward to supporting this recommendation. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I also wanted to highlight a few things from the community feedback, showing support for enforceable smoke-free areas in public places. As mentioned by my fellow councillors, the enhancement of nature strips, putting responsibility on the larger retailers for shopping trolleys. I have to say I do agree with Roger Fife, who's in the gallery. I'm appalled at some customer behaviour, particularly seeing trolleys thrown into the Plenty River. I would use the word personally as I'm enraged by that. Implementing these recommendations means that council's in line with community expectations. So without being too repetitive, I'd also like to quickly thank Justine for her work over the last 2 years through the consultation of this and the development of this. We have a question.
I'm so sorry, Mayor, but thank you for the opportunity, because I missed our last speaker. I seem to look at my notes and miss the last one. So a question to the Director, could there be an explanation as to why the list of trees is limited compared to the full list of trees that was discussed with the Speaker's notes today?
I'm not sure whether I can answer that tonight. I might need to take that question on notice. Yeah.
I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 3.7, councillor use of social media policy. There is one speaker on this item. Kevin Hill from the Banyule Ratepayers Action Group will address council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. Just a couple of quick things. If the councillors, and I'm not necessarily limiting it to this group of councillors, but if councillors in general follow the rules, this is a good thing. But we all know what happens in politics. The question I've got is, when a councillor doesn't follow the code of conduct, what penalties apply? Is it a stand down from the CEO? Is it an imposition of points and a fine? And who makes the decision as to whether there's been a breach? In relation to the Risk and Audit Committee, if a councillor inadvertently, I wouldn't suggest wouldn't do it deliberately, either imputes or makes a defamatory comment, who gets sued? Is it the council, given that it's given licence to this activity, or is it the individual? And on page 4 of 6, there is section 4.5, and it says councillors must ensure. I don't think that's strong enough. I think it should be something like are legally, personally responsible for another person's postings. I think that needs to be tightened up, because someone can say, well, I did my best, and just walk away. So I think it needs to close the gate a bit on some of that stuff. But other than that, I welcome the initiative of actually having this policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Champion.
Thanks, Mayor. I just had a question of our Speaker for clarification on something, if that's all right. You mentioned that some of the wording just needed to be a little bit different from must to...
Must ensure.
Must ensure.
Change it to becomes legally, personally responsible.
For somebody else's posting?
Yes.
Okay. Can you help me understand?
Well, the council's obviously got something in mind there when it says must ensure. So in other words, if they're engaging a person or allowing a person to do postings on their behalf, they have to be legally responsible for that.
On their behalf. I got it. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor McKern.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, I'd like to ask a question too in relation to a number of the queries that the Speaker has raised, and thank you, Speaker, for your questions to the appropriate director. I too am interested in the answers to what are the penalties for not following the Code of Conduct, and who makes the decision regarding a breach of the Code of Conduct. Could we get some response to those queries, please?
Lynn, Governance. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. With the current Model Councillor Code of Conduct, should there be a breach of that, it would be dependent on the type of breach as to what the penalty may or may not be. There is also the ability to have arbitration as well. So that would just depend on what type of breach you were, I guess, the type of breach that was undertaken.
Just for further clarification through you, Mayor, what are the penalties and who actually makes the decision regarding whether or not there has been a breach? Who calls out a councillor? Who has the authority to do so?
Again, and through you, Mayor, it would depend on the type of breach. So there are particular breaches that would come under the integrity agencies. So, for example, the Local Government Inspectorate or IBAC could you could be referred to IBAC or through the local government inspectorate, and they may or may not come back to council, that councillor, with a particular penalty.
Thank you, Councillor. The CEO, would you like to add any information?
Just probably for the gallery, council has to abide by the model code of conduct. It also adopted recently its dispute resolution procedures that actually sets out everything. It also has a process for internal arbitration, and it actually sets out where and how councillors can be individually or council groups removed and what they're responsible for. But ultimately, it's up to the council group themselves to manage the behaviour through the mayor.
There is an officer report in the agenda papers. Moved Councillor McKern, seconded Councillor Garotti. Councillor McKern.
Thank you, Mayor. Social media, as we all know, is an important communication platform between elected representatives and the communities they serve. Without social media, there are really limited ways of councillors reaching the broader community and their own constituents on a regular basis on council topics of community interest. Yes, we know about the banner and the ward news and the news from our neighbourhood, but I'm talking about regular communication. While council's social media reports regularly on council-wide activities, councillors' own social media tends to highlight more so topics, events that are of ward interest. After all, councillors are elected on a ward basis, so it makes sense to have a mode of regular contact with local residents. The policy council is being asked to adopt identifies councillors' right to freedom of expression, including expressing a view that differs from council's official position, with the proviso that it complies with the councillor code of conduct, which essentially speaks to councillor behaviours, good governance and the role of a councillor per the Local Government Act. In my opinion, it's really common sense stuff. It is important that councillors make clear on their social media pages that comments expressed are their own and not necessarily reflective of the endorsed council position. I certainly agree with that. While I will be supporting the adoption of this policy, I believe that it is based on common sense behaviour that one would reasonably expect from an elected official, and perhaps could have been served up as guidelines rather than a policy per se. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McKern. Councillor Garotti.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'll be happy to support the adoption of the policy this evening. Appreciate the feedback from one of our speakers. But I honestly think that the feedback's already covered in the policy. So with regard to enforcement considerations 7.3, that covers that a councillor must comply with the model councillor code of conduct, and that failure to do so would be constitute under the Local Government Act and may be addressed through council's adopted council internal dispute resolution procedure or through the internal arbitration process. So that's quite explicit. The policy is referring to other procedures and policies regarding that. I do note section 9.3, it makes it explicit that councillors are required to comply with relevant Commonwealth and state legislation and laws in their use of social media. So if there was a breach in that regard, that's the councillors, just like we are in our day-to-day lives, for following the law. We're also required to follow the law, state and federal, in our use of social media, and would no doubt come under enforcement under those respective levels of government. And then I do pick up the point around just the councils must, I think it's section 11, must, rather than, and the request around having some sort of legal obligation associated to that language. But I think that that's picked up in 9.3 around confirming the requirement to comply with state and federal law. So the purpose of this policy's got to be a balancing act, because it clearly has to moderate council behaviour and set clear expectations around social media usage. But also too, it's the personal social media of councillors, and there has to be an opportunity for councillors to express their own opinions and to do so in an appropriate way. I think that this policy strikes that appropriate balance. But as always, we really do appreciate feedback from learned members of our community on this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. Just quickly, in a world where there is no social media policy, there's a lack of accountability, use of aliases, hiding behind pages. People can make any comment they like and misinformation. We're heavily accountable, we're exposed, we put our faces and our real names out there. So I think we're pretty heavily policed. But yeah, the way I read this, we're accountable to each other. We're going to hold ourselves to account, and as my fellow councillors have just said, we're abiding by many layers of laws. So I don't think you need to worry too much about ensuring that we're policed in this matter. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor O'Kane.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor. Just a very quick comment that when going through this social media policy and its development, there was some discussion about freedom of expression for councillors in relation to general or specific council policy. And I think that we have struck a balance where councillors are still free to express their genuine opinions with regards to policies where they may not 100% align with some decisions or some topics, and I appreciate that balance has been struck. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Does any other councillor wish to speak? I might just add a few comments. It is a difficult space to navigate. Social media allows us councillors to directly engage with residents. It's also a space for residents to voice their opinions, and also a space for people to vent in general. My concern around social media is that it's also a space of misinformation and manipulation at times, and the information that's out there cannot always be relied upon. You know, we need to ensure that we consume information from other sources so that we have a depth of understanding on key issues, not just following a social media page. So it does foster engagement and immediate access, but it also must be used appropriately, and therefore the birth of this policy. Put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. The next item is 3.8, 1 Stradbroke Avenue.
Thanks, Mayor. I declared a conflict of interest earlier, and I'll leave the room. Thanks.
Thank you. On this item, we have one speaker. Pippa Griffith will address council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. Thank you, Pippa.
Thank you. This is a lost opportunity to create a really special and significant, badly needed community facility close to both the medical and Heidelberg Central precincts and to the station and bus interchange. Heidelberg is now a major activity centre without any easily accessible council-owned community meeting facilities. In 1 Stradbroke Avenue, you have a council-owned piece of land which has some very significant advantages. It is right by an area designated for significant improvements according to the Heidelberg Structure Plan, which was updated at the last meeting of this council. These improvements include that section of the Burgundy Street median strip becomes an urban plaza with a heritage building on it repurposed for new civic use. And on the other corner of Stradbroke Avenue, the public open green space abuts the breakout space underneath the rail bridge, which is also due to be improved according to the structure plan. And in Service Reserve, a little bit further up Stradbroke Avenue, it's to become a more usable amphitheatre-style space. And all of this is so close to the station and significant bus stops. With improved pedestrian access around that whole area, again part of the structure plan, you could capitalise on the proximity to the medical precinct, the business and shopping hub of Burgundy Street and transport links, and to quote from the structure plan, create an identifiable heart of the centre. As well as being close to all those things I mentioned, it would also be close to those residents moving into the many dwellings to be built. Those residents will need easily accessible community facilities. In reality, they're needed now because of the sale of Horden Street Community Hall. As there's no obvious other replacement for that hall, this would seem to be a no-brainer. So instead of selling it, keep it, develop it as a community centre and create that heart of the centre. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, there's an officer report before you, set out in the agenda papers. Moved, Councillor Castaldo, seconded Councillor Garotti. Councillor Castaldo, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, and thank you to the Speaker for coming in tonight. You've raised some important issues that do need to be considered, and Heidelberg does need. We do need a community facility, I agree totally. And we need an identifiable heart to the centre. Absolutely need that as well. So, look, thanks for raising those tonight. Now, this is a particular challenging site that Council owns. It's hard to get to. It's got paid for parking that's at a premium all the time around it. It has been underutilised, delivering poor value to the community for a long time. There's been a few suggested usages and been considered for a number of years as a strategic opportunity of Council. Its location in the past and recently updated in the Heidelberg Structure Plan is identified to encourage the consolidation of medical facilities and services and enable a mixture of uses above the 10 metres. Now, a lot of this report isn't available for the residents to see in confidentials, but what has been noted, if you read through the report carefully, it proposes development that are compliant with the medical precinct. We've gone to great lengths to make sure that land in the most important built-up city centre of Banyule delivers good value for our community and also to special interest groups in the medical field. So we've gone out to the market, made sure that we've gone through a process to try and deliver something of good value, not just to Heidelberg but the broader community. And I'm very supportive of moving this one forward. I recognise that we have a lot of work to do in Heidelberg to provide some of those other uses, and we're working for that and a range of strategies to deliver on those. But tonight, I'm comfortable moving forward with the recommendation put by officers, and I think that's about all I can say on the matter, but I think we're going to have good value for our community over the longer term with the direction we're currently going.
Thank you, Councillor Castaldo. Councillor Garotti? Sorry. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm certainly taking the lead of Councillor Castaldo on this one. Spent a lot of time with him getting a full briefing, and he's got it well covered. So thanks for your summary there. And I'm in full support with the benefits that this will provide our greater community. Thank you.
I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 3.9, Quarterly Financial Report. There are no speakers on this item and there's an officer report before you, councillors. Do I have a mover? Moved, Councillor Garotti. Seconded, Councillor O'Kane. Councillor Garotti, do you wish to speak? Councillor O'Kane, do you wish to speak? Does any other councillor wish to speak? I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Where is she?
That's all.
Yeah. Item 3.10, submission of motion to the Municipal Association of Victoria, MAV State Council meeting. There is an officer report in the agenda papers. I'm now calling for a motion. Councillor Curry, could you please take us through these amendments?
Thanks, Mayor. So we've got the following amendments, and I'll just read them out from the point of the amendment. So in point 1, with the addition of following motions in response to the state government's release the Plan for Victoria and associated planning reforms, being A, that MAV supports advocacy to the Victorian Government to consider the impacts of all housing strategies on the natural environment and the ability of urban areas to retain and or create a 30% tree canopy and reflects the priorities of cooling and greening Melbourne. B, that MAV supports advocacy for all Victorian Government-led housing strategies to include deliberative engagement with the public and councils in LGAs across Victoria. C, that MAV supports advocacy with federal and state government for increased funding to support infrastructure requirements for growing communities. D, that MAV support the role of local government as the primary decision maker for planning applications and the maintenance of broad third-party appeal rights. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. So moved, and I'm happy to second it. Thank you, Councillor.
Thanks, Mayor. The Mayor is the delegate for the MAV. We've got a meeting coming up and I think it's May. I'm actually the substitute, but the Mayor and I are working together to bring these supporting motions to the MAV. We expect that if it passes council tonight, so I'm hoping that we'll get broad council support to take these to the MAV. It's one more avenue for advocacy to retain the rights for our residents, to show the importance for our environment, and also to make sure that when we grow as communities and we welcome new developments into our suburbs, that we're getting the support from the different levels of government to produce infrastructure that will be required for that move and already should be provided in better for our communities. So I'm supporting this. I've actually put this motion in today, so I'm hoping that the councillors can read these motions and get forward with it. These are brought on the back of the announcements that were made. I think there was about one every day in the past week. So the turnaround from hearing those announcements from state government into turning this into an advocacy item was quite tight. So I'm hoping the councillors will support me and I look forward to hearing any other comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So just to repeat a little, the motion put forward by Councillor Curry asks to allow those third-party appeal rights for the community in relation to the future homes provisions from the Victorian planning schemes. In addition to that, the tree canopy, increased tree canopy and increased funding for growing communities, and that important planning decisions are kept within local government. So the State Council meeting, councils can bring business towards these, and that is upcoming in in the following months. The MAV is made up of representation from all councils in Victoria, and a lot of these issues do come up from other councils, but it's very important that we put these things forward so they are heard, and if they are duplicated, it makes the argument even stronger. So it's democracy at work. Thank you to Councillor Curry for all her advocacy in this space. She's been very organised in getting these out there to councillors. I put them. Any other councillor wish to speak? I put the motion. Councillor O'Kane.
Thank you, Mayor. Just again, a very quick comment that thank you to Councillor Curry and Meth for all your work in this area. I just want to make a distinction, really, I suppose, that promoting deeper, richer, stronger democratic process at local government area is not at the expense. In fact, it is, I think, really at the support of increased housing. These things are not juxtaposed. It's just about how can we actually achieve these goals better and have better local outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Okay. Item 3.11, record of councillor meetings. There are no speakers on this item. Could I have a mover, please? Moved, Councillor Garotti. Seconded, Councillor Champion. Any councillor wish to speak? I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 4.1, Banyule Community Fund update. There are no speakers on this item. Councillor McKern. Moved. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Champion. Councillor McKern, do you wish to speak?
Established in 2023, the Banyule Community Fund is a community fund enabling residents and businesses to make tax-deductible donations towards local needs. Since its launch about 14 months ago, the BCF has raised nearly $38,000, attracting $21,000 in its first 6 months. I'd like to congratulate all involved on this achievement and thank you to our donors. I think this is a very important initiative, giving our community the opportunity to make donations on important causes ranging from arts and culture to housing and homelessness, and many causes in between, including food security, climate change and mental health support. Previously, Council had no means to receive private donations. We've been hearing how tight money can be with respect to budgets and deficits and the like. So encouraging a function such as the BCF, I think, is quite important for Council. That said, for the resources required to administer it, I think the program would indeed benefit from more promotion and exploration of new opportunities for private contribution. For example, last year, as part of the Chelsworth Park 40-year lease agreement between Council and Ivanhoe Grammar, I proposed that the school contribute a $100,000 donation to the fund. After all, 40-year lease is a long time, 2 generations worth. Unfortunately, this wasn't supported. However, it presented an example of another avenue to seek donations. If Banyule Community Fund is to flourish, it really has to be a lot more proactive, in my opinion, in seeking donations and open to different and new avenues for seeking these donations. Yes, it'll mean negative responses, but I'm confident that donations will also be secured. I think what we don't want to see is those administering the fund just sitting back, essentially waiting for the money to come to them. We need to be more proactive and look at some of our interactions with private organisations now and how we can leverage off those interactions to attract more funds. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McKern. Councillor Champion.
Yeah, just really quickly, I do concur with Councillor Alita's comments. We do need to be a lot more active in marketing the BCF. Absolutely agree. Yeah. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Champion. Does any other councillor wish to speak? I just wanted to say thank you to the Director of Community Wellbeing for organising for me to meet the recipients of the first grant round. I was reminded of the excellent work done by Bansic in Heidelberg West, Open House in McLeod, Footscape, which is also based in McLeod, the Heidelberg SES and the Olympic Neighbourhood House in Heidelberg West. So the report does outline the outreach and the meaningful connections, engaging in individuals and addressing the community need. And thank you to all of these groups as well for the support that you provide, making it very easy for the round of the Banyule Community Fund. I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Moving now to item 6.2, how the Future Homes policy operates in the Banyule planning scheme. There are no speakers on this item. I look for a mover. Moved, Councillor Curry. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Champion. Councillor Curry, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. So I was getting my breath back after I departed the chambers. So the Future Homes was actually the initial motion that we're putting to MAV, and the other motions were additional to that one. Thanks to the officers for bringing back a report on the operation of the Future Homes clause in the Banyule planning scheme. Just to recall back to the 9th of December, Council brought an advocacy item on the Future Homes to require some consultation with the public and councils and request the Minister for Planning to remove the clause until such consultation had been done. We've now finished our round of advocacy for the Future Homes, except for the MAV. We do hope that different levels of government are listening to us when we say we support third-party rights for our residents and we want to be involved in the decision-making for our residents. Council are best placed to make the decisions where the development application impacts our land, impacts our neighbours and impacts our residents. And in relation to the response that we received from all the letters that we sent out, so remember we sent letters to 78 councils, we sent a letter to the Minister for Planning, we sent a letter to our 8 local members. It's a bit disappointing that we didn't get more responses and better responses. And I might just note one of the responses from the Minister has requested that DTP come and engage with Council so that we can engage with the Future Homes priorities. And I respond to that, that consultation should have happened before the implementation of the clause. And also, we do welcome that we are also inviting, I'm sorry, I forgot to do the amendment to this. Yes, so I'll read this out in a moment, that we're going to invite the Honourable Sonia Kilkenny for discussions with Council so that she can understand further our point of view. And lastly, I'd like to mention that this has hit the news in the last week. So we had the developer for the first application of Future Homes in Metropolitan Melbourne was on the news stating that we had overstepped our mark and that Council had made decisions that we weren't entitled to make. And so I just want to confirm, I did state, so I had my first radio interview the other day on the 26th of February. It was a bit daunting, it was the first one. I spoke with Ali Moore on the Drive afternoon show and at about the hour and 20-minute mark. And I explained that the Future Homes Priorities Council are in line with those priorities, but we still want to engage with our public and allow them the right to have feedback, and to state that the Future Homes clause instigates responsibility for Council to take on the role against the amenity and against the context. That is after it requires the eligibility box to be ticked with state government, with DTP. Thanks, Mayor. I've gone over time.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. And Councillor Champion, are you happy with that amendment?
I'm happy with that amendment. Did you want to read it out, just so that people can hear it as well?
Thank you. I'll read it again. So item 2 is the addition, which invites the Minister for Planning, the Honourable Sonia Kilkenny, to have a discussion with Mayor, CEO and councillors in relation to Future Homes Clause 53.24 and the application in the Banyule planning scheme. Thanks, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Just briefly, at the end of last term, the Sandon report, is that right? I've called it the right thing, came up. Yeah, that came up. That came to council. That was an item in council in our last council meeting before the end of term. And this is pretty much in line with that. It's another opportunity, another way for the state government to take over council's position, responsibility in planning for its own council. And it's another way for state government to take away our communities' voices. Do not underestimate how damaging that is. So I fully support this. We do need to contribute a lot more and voice ourselves a lot more to the state government, that our planning rules are in place, or our Banyule planning scheme has been created based on feedback from our community, based on what we know about our community and how we want to see Banyule grow, develop. We want to create our own rules, and we do not want to be overrun by the state government. So I'm fully supporting this and its amendment. So thank you very much, Councillor. And you spoke very well on the radio. I heard that. It was very good.
Thank you, Councillor. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor McKern.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Curry for her advocacy on this, given that Banyule represented the first go, or the first trial or application of the Future Homes Clause 53.24. I think it was important that we made the stand we did, and that the government is no doubt, the state government is no doubt thinking through what has happened with respect to this application and how to improve its application of it in future. I think we do need to understand that this application was rejected by Council for non-compliance with Clause 53.24 Future Homes provisions that are now part of the Banyule planning scheme. It was indeed not rejected by Council because of lack of community consultation or because of loss of appeal rights for residents. That said, the applicant does have appeal rights to VCAT and I believe has lodged an appeal. So what were the non-compliance items? They were items that can be amended by the applicant. They were items that addressed access standards, additional landscaping needs. I believe the side setbacks, rear setbacks and front setbacks were not considered large enough for provision of adequate landscaping, flood mitigation, ESD components, things that can be rectified. So the issue here that this council is really addressing is how we engage our community and give our community the right to comment on applications, even if they do come through the state government, and the right to appeal decisions that are made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKern. Does any other councillor wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just thought, just for some members of the gallery and the public, to confirm that the refusal was issued by officers under delegation. So, you know, if you read the article in The Age, you'd think it was some political thing of the council and councillors get involved in playing games. Well, no. And that's in fact the whole problem with this, that we don't get a say. So I don't even know who made the decision. It'd be someone in Natasha's team, but an officer under delegation. But that's the reality now. And I just want to clear that up for the community. When you've read the Age article and people are thinking, oh, council's holding things up and council's not allowing developments to happen that improve housing. Well, that's done by officers under delegation, and that's how the state government legislated it. We don't get a say. As your elected, paid representatives who front up to elections every 4 years, we don't get a say, and you don't get a say through us. That's the reality, but we're doing as much as we can to advocate to government and advocate to the Parliament more broadly around what we think a good planning scheme looks like. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Castaldo.
I'd just like to note the significant work Councillor Curry is putting forward on this very important area. A number of other councillors have contributed as well. It's a really important matter for our community and for councillors. There's a lot of dangers in this, but with any developer, they're always pushing the boundaries and they think they can get another avenue in to deliver a property that will earn them maximum dollars. In this case, not even the new process enabled them to do that. And he should have just looked at the rules better. He should have followed the advice of officers better. And sometimes you just got to take less of a profit if you're going to move a project forward. So, like Councillor Garotti said, the newspaper article didn't do justice to the complex conversation. But I think as a council, I'm very happy with the strong advocacy and collective work we're putting together to make sure that we get planning decisions made correctly and for our community's benefit.
Okay, Councillor McKern, then Councillor O'Kane.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I really would like to ask a question through you of the Director, given Councillor Garotti's statement. Councillor Garotti mentioned that we as councillors can no longer call in applications through the Future Homes Clause 53.24. However, can you clarify, Director, if indeed the community does have objections, that those objections can be brought to council and the council officers can reject an application based on community objections, in which case it would be the council who would be lodging an appeal at VCAT rather than community members direct? Does council still have the ability to lodge?
Director.
Through you, Mayor, the Future Homes removes the third-party appeal rights. So even if the applicant to the development lodges an appeal at the tribunal, there's no way to join objectors as a party. So as with many applications, our officers have done their technical assessment, and whilst there might be some areas of overlap where resident community objection might align with matters that council officers have deemed the development wanting, it certainly doesn't cover all. And in that respect, we defend the refusal decision that we have put forward, and we wouldn't have the capacity to bring forward matters that weren't relevant to our officer consideration. So if, put another way, if an objection was around overdevelopment of the site, that's not a relevant consideration under the planning framework, so we wouldn't be taking that as a matter towards the tribunal. So it is different. Council does represent itself at the tribunal, defending the decision that officers have made based on the grounds the officers have refused the application.
Residents will not be able to say, pass their objections on to council officers and that council officers then represent those objections.
No, council can never represent an objector's views at the tribunal. Council always represents the view of the council. And there's no difference in this instance, the difference being that the resident objectors cannot join the appeal as independent participants.
Councillor O'Kane, then Councillor Curry.
Thank you, Mayor. I see this also as an awareness-raising discussion. I would reiterate the distinction that Councillor McKern and Councillor Garotti raised, that this particular application was knocked back on the the conditions outlined by the state government itself, and not by conditions that are set by council, and that we are pursuing our rights, our democratic rights, as we believe it, for ourselves as a council, but also on behalf of residents. But I'd also like to make the point that this does not mean that we as a council are anti-development or anti-increased housing. In fact, I think that we're doing a lot of work in this area, and particularly in Olympia, there's an enormous amount of development going on, and I think that we support the increase of housing within Banyule. Thank you.
Thank you. Circling back, Councillor Curry.
Actually, a question through you, Mayor, and to the Director. I think following on from the question posed by Councillor McKern, I think for further clarification is that it's understood that if Council refuses the application, then they issue a notice of refusal, and then the developer has a second bite of the cherry with VCAT. And if Council approves the application, could you confirm if there are any appeal rights, and does Council issue a permit on the spot?
Through you, Mayor, I think what you're getting at is if they appeal to the tribunal and the plans are revised to resolve our concerns. Is that the question? Or are you saying if we issued a permit, we'd issue a permit and then that would be it?
So, sorry, to clarify, if we approve the development, that's the end of the story. So there's one bite of the cherry, and if we refuse the application, the developer gets two bites of the cherry.
Yeah, so any refusal is appealable to the tribunal. Likewise, if we approved the planning permit, we apply conditions, and certainly if any of those conditions had not been palatable to the developer, they could have also appealed those conditions. But you're quite right that if council officers had supported the development, a planning permit would have issued and that would have been the end of it.
Does any other councillor wish to speak? I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 6.3, 145 Weedlick Road, Eltham North. Amendment to an approved childcare centre. There is one speaker on this item, Mark Chester from PAD or PAD Urban, will address council in person. Thank you, Mark. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and councillors. This is a fairly straightforward application that's before you. The applicant proposes to increase the number of childcare spaces at number 145 Weedlick Road from 90 to 92. So yes, that's a factor of 2. The main driving force behind this is actually got to do with the difficulty in obtaining quality childcare staff and the ratios that are required. In increasing the numbers by 2, there is no need to increase the size of the building that has been accommodated internally, and there is no need to increase the number of staff. So essentially, we're trying to make a more efficient centre. This is going to be an amazing childcare centre, and one that more kids will be able to have access to in an area that is really in need of childcare spaces. There was one objection received, but it related to various traffic safety arrangements that I'm not sure would be considered to be specific to this amendment of 2 childcare spaces. And look, ultimately, at the end of the day, what we have here is a situation where the question that is before you is, will the 2 additional childcare spaces or the capacity increase of 2 childcare spaces result in unreasonable traffic implications, car parking or traffic for that matter? If the answer isn't already obviously no, then what I would say to you is ultimately there's 17 on-site car spaces. There's an additional 6 curbside spaces that are being added to the street for everybody to use. And the additional 2 spaces results in a statutory requirement of less than half a car space. So, I mean, if we're balancing up policies and everything else, I think everybody would have a hard time suggesting that that was the defining characteristic or the defining element here. In summary, I'd say it's a pretty straightforward application, and on the balance of all policies at play here, that it should be, in our opinion, a pretty straightforward decision for council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. There's a question from Councillor Wood.
Sorry, just a quick question. Can you just clarify how it actually helps with the ratios? I missed the point.
Yes. So with the current number at 90, that triggers a ratio of X number of full-time, call it childcare workers, 1 per 4 or whatever the ratios are, plus X amount of roaming staff. 92 does not change that number. So when the childcare operator that's taking on this role of this childcare centre, they're sitting there going, well, with the additional two child care places, we can provide that to children essentially free of any amenity impacts because we don't have to increase the number of staff. And that will help us lower, for example, the cost of the childcare centre, which is a big, big issue in this particular location. The studies that have been done, just to answer your question, the studies that have been done in the area suggest that there is really quite a significant need for childcare space and at a price point as well.
Councillor O'Kane.
Sorry, just on that, if I could ask a question as well. So you say that having these 2 extra spaces will actually decrease the cost of the amenities. Have you calculated that, and is that being passed on to the people who will actually use the services?
Yes, that's a really great question. So I personally have not as a town planning consultant, but what I can tell you is that they're trying to cap the daily rate at a particular rate. And this is a big, big concern because at the moment, I hope we're not going into private information, but they're putting $500,000 into the play equipment, for example. This is going to be a really fantastic childcare centre, and they are trying their best to lower that cost. The big issue in the previous application that you might recall was the size of the building and the impact that it might have had on neighbouring properties. We've kept the building the exact same size, reduced admin areas and things like that to help accommodate these additional 2 children. That not answer your question?
Not really, but it's quite a floral answer.
Sorry. Go.
Thank you. We have a mover, Councillor Garotti. Do I have a seconder, Councillor Champion? Councillor Garotti, do you wish to speak? Councillor Champion, do you wish to speak?
I will really briefly, Mayor. So this came to council about 18 months ago, 12 months ago, something like that, and there were several objectors. We went through the process, and we're back at the developer listened to those objections, modified accordingly, and we're back here today with the second attempt, and I think we had one objection. So that tells me that the applicant has worked with officers and listened to the community and come up with what we have now in front of us. And this is how it should be. So this is a really good example of just effective communication within Banyule, with the residents, with the applicant, with the officers, and a final decision at council. Just effective communication in the area that people know how it functions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Does any other councillor wish to speak? I might just add, thinking about what was just said, implementing there is a lot of childcare needs in the north. There's also a lot of childcare centres going up in the area. The business case that's just been put forward to us is reasonable. I understand that people have to move forward and run a business to make sure that they're meeting, targets. At the same time, listening to the community on this that live in the area, that they originally had a milk bar there, so there's a different level of interruption and traffic. The objector to the amendment is concerned just about the increased traffic in the area, and if you've been up to Eltham North, it's nowhere near a train station residents moved to the area for the beautiful trees, the surrounds, the parks, the nature reserves. Most of the area is hilly. It's an area identified by cyclists as a challenge. You only have really, elite sportsmen riding their bikes through there. I'm not one of them. And cars are essential to get around. I think about the ageing community, the livability of the area, the connectivity. As a councillor, I don't want to conflate these issues. So independently, the business case may stack up, but and I will support this for the basis of all of that. But I do want to acknowledge that it is a change for the residents there. I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Okay. We move on to general business. There is an item from the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Castaldo, myself. Would you like to begin?
On the 21st of February, the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, the Honourable Chris Bowen, and the member for Jagga Keith Waits visited Watermark in Greensborough to announce that Banyule was successful in securing 2.35 million grants under the federal government's Community Energy Upgrades Fund. We're now on track to entirely electrify our premier multi-purpose office complex and regional aquatic centre, leading to an anticipated 37% reduction in emissions. It has also been a long journey to get where we are today, and so many contributors. I'd like to thank you all along this journey. Transitioning this whole building to clean energy and providing clean energy for vehicles is a wonderful story of what is possible and where all buildings need to get to in the future. Looking forward to closing out this beautiful project in the coming years, I believe in 2027. And it's a great environmental outcome, but one that also delivers considerable cost reductions operations going forward as well. So it's an all-round win for our community and the broader community, and we are a leader in this space, and I thank our federal government for their significant contribution to both us but to many other councils across the country that need that support, because sometimes there's a big capital cost up front to deliver these projects. There may be a different political party to myself, but when a wonderful contribution has been made, we do need to acknowledge that, and the tremendous amount of work of many people in our organisation for, I would say, 10 years we've worked on this. So we're finally moving forward. Congratulations to everyone.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have a quick report on Twilight Sounds. So it was absolute privilege to attend Twilight Sounds on the 15th of February with my fellow councillors. While the weather was uncharacteristically cool, couldn't believe how cool it was actually. There were frequent showers throughout the day, and I think as the day wore on, it really did put people off. But in the middle of summer, but the lineup on the night was superb, making up for that weather. So overall, we had 2,000 people attend the event in spite of that climate. The talent was amazing. I won't list all of the lineup, but the headline act was Mitch Tambo, was really, really good, capping off a night of fun, music and celebration. And also, I think there was a federal government grant to make this year's event even bigger lineup, to run a little longer than we would ordinarily. So we thank for that. I'd like to thank the staff also involved on the day. Despite the weather, they worked hard to ensure that, residents were happy attending on the day. So that's it from me, and that's all for the reports of the night. Oh, we have one. Sorry, Councillor McKern. I don't have it here, but go for it.
Yeah, I'd just like to acknowledge Robert Bender and the Friends of Wilson's Reserve for organising a clean-up event at Ivanhoe Station this Sunday gone for Clean Up Australia Day. Sustainable Community Ivanhoe was represented, and Ian and I joined the fun. And all in all, we collected 12 big bags of rubbish, for which Ivanhoe Station is looking decidedly a little tidier today. But I would like to take this opportunity to put a call out to residents who do use Ivanhoe Station as their local train station. A group is forming to enhance the open space verges there, and I'm keen to hear from residents interested in participating. We need volunteers, and this is your opportunity to be involved and make a difference around Ivanhoe Station. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKern, for the report. The Deputy Mayor has one final report.
I'd just like to acknowledge the considerable work that John Sanderson, the Minister at St George's Church in Warncliffe Road, the Anglican Church, he's finished up his work at that church and will be moving on to another post, but he's been in our community for about 6 or 7 years, and he's made considerable contributions to East Ivanhoe, and he's connected with community and contributed in so many ways. I'd just like to acknowledge there are people that come through our community and contribute significantly over short periods of times. One of those was to put the church on heritage listing, and the significant restoration work down there of a very important community asset, not owned by council, but he's protected it for our future communities. So he's been a wonderful contribution. Just like to note his significant contribution over the last 6 or 7 years.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm moving on to public questions. We have 4 public questions, and if any member of the public's in the gallery who have a question, they're welcome to approach the lectern to ask their question. For those who have a question that's not present, it won't be read out, but it will be in the minutes. So the first question is from Kevin Hill of Ivanhoe. Thank you, Kevin. You're up already.
Yeah, raring to go, Mayor. Thank you very much. My question is North East Link grants to council and community groups. Did Banyule Council sign any confidentiality agreements for the North East Link project for any LP grants such as Ford Park redevelopment, which stipulated that they not criticise the North East Link Authority or state government?
Thank you for your question, Kevin. There's an officer response. I don't have who's reading it. Director Swan.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Council as an organisation has 2 main agreements with the North East Link project. One is a memorandum of understanding and the other is an agreement for works, which is for the sports field upgrades. These agreements contain confidentiality clauses that prohibit council officers from sharing any information disclosed by the North East Link project to the public or councillors without obtaining their permission. The requirements of the agreements don't apply to councillors, meaning their roles representing the community are not affected by any of these clauses. We would not be able to sign an agreement that limits councillors from performing their required duties. While we cannot share the specifics of our agreements and do not have access to other agreements, it is common practice for the state government to include the Victorian Common Funding Agreements when providing funding to community organisations. Clause 14.3 subsection E has a termination clause stating if the organisation behaves in a way that the department believes that its continued association with the organisation may be detrimental to the reputation of the department, it allows for termination. These agreements do not have a clause preventing criticism.
Thank you, Director Swan. Our second question is from Melissa Murphy-Webster of Watsonia North. Thank you, Melissa.
Good evening. Now that we've got a new council group for the next 4 years, will the contributions by residents be reconsidered regarding the limitations for ordinary meetings? Most of the now sitting councillors made election promises to improve community engagement. However, the increased restrictions on speaking passed by the previous term of councillors is not conducive to achieve that goal. Residents would like to see an increased time allocated to speaking on items, opportunity to speak on more than 2 items, and public question time to be reverted back to the start of the meetings, which would encourage more people to appear in person. I understand that the meetings can go quite long. However, if councillors could consider implementing an already said policy, for example, limiting the thanking of individuals involved in agenda items, or just the first councillor who speaks, this, along with other small adjustments, could help reduce the length of time the meetings go to and free up time for the residents. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and an answer will be provided by Linda Chappell, Manager of Governance and Integrity.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. A similar question was asked and answered relating to community participation in council meetings at the previous council meeting on the 10th of February 2025. In order to alter current community participation methods as outlined in the Governance Rules, Chapter 3, Community Participation, such as request to speak, including speaking times and number of items to speak on, and public question time, including its designated position on the agenda, a review of the current governance rules, specifically regarding community participation in council meetings, would be required. Should a review be undertaken, it would trigger a community consultation process on the governance rules in line with requirements under Section 60 of the Local Government Act 2020, requiring a project to be resourced and undertaken to complete that review. The governance rules, recently reviewed in 2 parts, comprising Part 1, Governance Rules and Election Period Policy, adopted 14th of November 2022, and Part 2 as a targeted review of community and public participation, now known as Chapter 3, Community Participation, adopted in 30th of October 2023. As part of recommendations and via recent reforms from the 2023 IBAC report Operation Sandon, Local Government Victoria have commenced work to address recommendations. These develop and introduce model governance rules to promote best practice meeting procedure across the sector. These are expected to be published and come into force by December 2025. As it is not yet known if those model governance rules will determine how the community participate in meetings moving forward, and given the expected release in December 2025, it would not be considered a valuable use of resources to undertake a review at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from David Mulholland of Ivanhoe, who's not here, so an answer will be provided in writing. The 4th question is from Roger Fife of Ivanhoe. Thank you, Roger.
I framed this question based on the reasonable person test. Given that I've asked 2 questions about traffic management in the section from Lower Heidelberg Road through to Upper Heidelberg Road, and been told in the first instance that traffic counts at traffic lights sufficed, and then secondly, when I honed in on the issue of parking on one side of Waterdale Road, where a very new 2-hour parking sign has been fixed to a telephone pole, and being, again, denied any information about traffic counts, I was pleasantly surprised when I was driving along Waterdale Road and also walking along Waterdale Road and Ivanhoe Parade and Clifton Grove, and I'm guessing a couple of other streets in the area.
Sorry, Mayor, can we get to the question?
Yes, I'm getting to the point. And that is, how will the road traffic counts information currently being collected for local roads, including Waterdale Road, north of Livingston Street, and Ivanhoe Parade, Ivanhoe, and adjacent roads be used? To be absolutely clear, precisely what is this data going to be used for?
Thank you for the question, Roger, and the response will be provided by Natasha Swan, Director of City Development.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Council has received complaints regarding the speed of vehicles using a number of streets in the Ivanhoe area, including Livingston Street and Ivanhoe Parade,
Traffic counts are being undertaken to assess the speed of vehicles. These sorts of counts also record volume and type of vehicle. The data will be used to respond to the complaints.
Thank you. The next ordinary meeting of Council will be held on Monday the 24th of March. In accordance with Section 66 of the Local Government Act 2020, the meeting is now closed to member of the public for consideration of one confidential matter. Can I please have a councillor move and second? Moved Councillor Garotti, seconded Councillor Champion, to close the meeting to consider this item. Put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. The next ordinary meeting of Council will be held on the 24th of March. I now close the meeting at 10:46 p.m. Thank you to all in the gallery for sitting through.